the agenda, and I need to refer that back to my ad hoc committee on benefit analysis. And Dawn, I need to talk to you after the meeting just quickly about that. So I need to yank that item off the agenda. So the first item up is item 1, public open time. Welcome.
Gene Dyer, Samathville. Related to the item you just pulled, we previously had a discussion, said you're going to have a review committee or something. So has that been scheduled and is it open to the public?
Actually, it's an ad hoc committee that doesn't meet in public, trying to work through the various benefits and kind of tackling how to make sure all these benefits that are in the LGS-RGS contract are made consistent.
I understand that there are a number of differences. The main difference has to do with the retirement method.
Yeah.
And that's the item I'm interested in.
Right. So actually what I'd love is if you're willing to make a comment on the record, public comment just in general to the board about...
I'm very much in favor of the, not the pension, but the other, the defined contribution.
Okay, good.
I think as a board, you should recognize that you are really a business. That most businesses do this, and that if you in fact hire a new executive, he's certainly not going to want to tie into a failed California pension system. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to us in public time? Welcome, Barbara.
Hi. I just thought you might want to know about what's happening in the last days of this particular California Public Utilities Commission. They've got this energy efficiency profits decision, which they are determined to make before the end of the year so that Wall Street will be happy. And they've got the judge's decision, which says don't give them a dime. They really didn't deserve anything, but we already gave them $72 million, so we'll let that go. So that's a judge's decision. And then the assigned commissioner said, oh, we should give them $77 million because that was kept back in 2008. So this is getting ready for a decision last week, and all of a sudden there's another decision. There's another proposed decision by Commissioner Peavy, President Peavy, who says, oh, well, we'll split the difference and give them a little less, because we all know that we're making these numbers up, and they have, you know, the Division of Ratepayer Advocates says PG&E should get a very large penalty, and some of the other utilities maybe should too. So they've changed the numbers so many times nobody can keep track. But this is the decision that will be made in the next month or two, and will be charged a little extra because CCAs pay more of the shareholders' incentives than anybody else does, for all the help that they gave us here, I guess. And then there's a second decision which sets the risk-reward mechanism in the future. And for the next 3 years, they intend to, there won't be any risk. They're going to forget that there ever was a risk. They're just going to be rewards from now on. They're going to get guaranteed profits no matter what they do, even if they miss their targets the way they did this time. So that's what's coming.
Barbara, do you happen to know, I heard on the radio driving up here this evening about a smart meter decision. Did you track that by any chance?
Actually, there was a smart meter decision that came out today. Mary Beth just filmed that. I met with them earlier. And there was a whole bunch of people who were at the Fairfax, showdown the other night where I saw Barbara. And and they, of course, they denied the petition of the EMF Safety Network, and so we don't know what happens next. But Lou was great. The council was stellar at that meeting. You'll really enjoy the video, and that's going to be up on our site very soon. So we got videos of a lot of this stuff that'll be very entertaining, I'm sure.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else for public time? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the interim director's report. Don?
Great. So I have a couple of items this evening. The first is I wanted to report out on a hearing that took place just shortly after our last board meeting was held. This was a hearing put together by Senator Mark Leno to talk about the CCA efforts around California and some of the challenges that they've faced. And we have a full recording and an edited, more summarized recording of that hearing available on our website for folks that weren't able to attend and are interested in seeing that. There has been some follow-up out of that meeting, and some discussions are underway now with the Senator's office and with the Energy Committee regarding some possible new legislation that would be coming out early next year, and we're involved in that process. The second thing I want to report on is that we'll be holding a meeting next week with the CPUC and PG&E to discuss a possible code of conduct and to also help with addressing some of the ongoing operational issues that we've been having. So I look forward to reporting out on that at our next meeting or maybe sooner. I think it's also worth noting that we're involving San Francisco and some of the folks working on their CCA effort there with these meetings, and we think that might help move the process along. We don't have a place for this on our agenda, so I just wanted to remind folks that we have a holiday gathering coming up on December 16th. It's going to be at 4:30 p.m. at our offices, and it's a potluck, so feel free to come on by and bring something that you'd like to contribute, and we'd love to see all of you there. It's obviously open to the public, and information on that's on our website as well.
Sorry, what time is that, Dawn?
It's at 4:30 to 6 on December 16th. And then
That's a potluck, right?
It's a potluck, yeah.
And should board members bring?
On the 16th?
16th.
Uh-huh.
Bring food.
So we're supposed to bring food and drink?
Whatever you like.
Okay, good. Maybe it's time to put another dent in the ceiling.
Matching dents.
4:30 to 6.
Such a lightweight.
See, if you're really good, you'll just hit the same dent.
Oh, yeah, I'll try.
That's
You guys are all reliving 1981.
Sorry, Don, please
It's
continue.
okay. Just one last thing. I wanted to kind of do a little backcast to where we were about 3 months ago. We had a board goal-setting meeting on August 20th, and we talked about a lot of things that we wanted to accomplish over the next 6 months or so along that time frame. And I wanted to kind of do a check-in with the board and just a recap of where we are and where we've come. Since we launched in May, we're serving approximately 9,000 customers. We've launched a net energy metering tariff that allows people to generate more than, or get paid for extra generation at their business or home. We have provided rebates to electric vehicle charging stations. We have launched a small energy efficiency rebate program, which we're really excited about. And we've also launched a communications and marketing branding campaign, which we're going to hear some more about tonight, but already has made a big impact on our web brand and some of the other communications that we have going. But I think what's really exciting, in addition to all of those accomplishments, is to highlight some of the things that we talked about just in August that were important to our board. One of the things that was placed with a high priority was a feed-in tariff. Another was an RFP for renewable energy supply. Another was a PPA for asset purchases. And then a fourth was the Solar Shares program, which is kind of akin to or became part of the RFP process. Each of these items really took hold, and we spent a lot of time working on them over the last few months, and we're bringing each of these items to your board tonight for approval. So the technical committee has been working very hard on them over the last few months, and a lot has been accomplished. So just wanted to kind of look back at how we're doing as far as big picture things that we want to accomplish, and really how these things fit into our integrated overall plan is important, and I think it's exciting to see how much we've accomplished. The last thing that was discussed at our board retreat that's underway is looking at refinancing our debt, and that's something that we're working on right now, and it's moving along very well. So I think we have a lot to be proud of here at the end of the year, and I'm really excited about some of the items coming up on the agenda. Next steps that we'll be looking at in the new year include demand response rates. That's something that we discussed in our mid-year goal setting as something to tackle after these other things have been accomplished. Greatly expanding our energy efficiency program, and part of that will involve getting access to the PGC funds at the CPUC. Expanding our Phase 2 customer base, and then looking towards the end of the year or possibly into the following year, looking at credit rating and bond issuance so that we can actually look at some bigger projects. We haven't been able to issue bonds up until this point because of our size and our the assets that we have under our belt so far, but it's something we will be able to look at in the coming year. So we're excited about those things. And with that, I'll wrap it up and turn it over to the next item. Are any questions?
Questions for the director?
Good job.
Thanks, John.
Really great.
Great report. A lot going on. You know, it's with great pride that we reflect on everything that you guys have gotten done in 3 short months. We're operating in the black. We're serving thousands of customers, great power, and you guys have started to build out the integrated resource plan. So, way to go. It's good. Next item up is the consent calendar. As you know, I pulled item C4 off, but items
We also need to pull item C3.
C3.
But just for a revision, not wholly from the agenda.
Okay, so we'll move C3 to right in front of item 4. So we have 1, 2, and 5 on there. I had one comment about the minutes on October 7th. The minutes accurately reflect what this guy said,
Charles Schultz?
Charles Schultz. And I guess that's appropriate, Greg, that we're basically just reflecting what he believes to be true.
That's correct.
There's no, I seem to recall saying something that kind of gave our point of view also, and that's not reflected in the minutes. Do we need to add that?
Yeah, it's not, to the extent it's clear that his comments, it really doesn't matter as long as that is how it's shown. So,
Okay. Because he makes a comment here that he reflects, his point of view is that it wasn't rejected and wasn't correctly responded to, and I think even in that same meeting, we took exception to
well,
that.
yeah, at the last meeting, also, we got into more of a discussion, and I actually then responded to the comments he had made.
Right, and you've got that in writing too. But it doesn't matter that we leave this comment standing as is, unrefuted in the minutes?
You know, if there was a comment that you had made in response, I tell you the truth, that would not be a bad idea, just to provide context to his own comment. I don't recall from that meeting what had been said back in October, but because you're referring to the October minutes, right?
Yeah, but he makes reference to them in these minutes.
Yeah, and wasn't it the November meeting that Greg made?
I did.
Yeah.
I made the clarification at the November meeting.
Right, and these are minutes for the November meeting.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
references October 7th.
Yeah, we're referring to October 7th, and I can't be sure I remember accurately, but I wanted to make sure that leaving these comments in the November meeting minutes unanswered doesn't cause us a problem. And furthermore, I have a vague recollection that even at the October meeting, one of us said something about that issue. And so I just wonder if we ought to go back into the record and properly have the minutes reflect that both points of view are reflected. But if it totally doesn't matter, I won't hang it up, but I just wonder if we ought to.
You know what, for the November meeting, because there was a more extended discussion, I think that, my comments should be reflected into the minutes. So I think it'd be worthwhile to make that correction.
Yep.
Does it?
To the minutes.
So does it matter at all if we hold these over to the January meeting?
Not at all.
So how about this? I'll pull item C5 off and C1 off, just asking for us to check once, again, to make sure our minutes reflect
Yes.
both points of view.
Right.
I don't want,
Because it is appropriate for his comments to be stated as he stated.
Absolutely.
But then I think that for context, it's a good idea, even in the minutes, to show that.
good.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And so if it doesn't cause any administrative headache, we'll approve both months' worth of minutes, probably this month's worth of minutes in January. So I guess that leaves item C2 on consent, the monthly budget update. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let's see, I guess consent, we don't do discussion. So without public comment, we'll consider those approved without objection?
I'll just abstain.
One abstention on C2. Okay, item C3 needs to be discussed directly because there's a staff report on C3. This is the contract with Douglas and Liddell.
Right, so we had done an earlier version of this second addendum, but then we decided to increase the amount slightly so that it would cover a couple more months worth of regulatory services. And the figures didn't get changed throughout the entire second addendum, but the correct amounts are reflected in the staff report. So the increase
The new one.
would be, the increase in the contract amount would be for $65,000. And so that would, the total contract amount would go up to $105,000 for through the end of the fiscal year. The other revision in this contract is we requested a rate discount, and so we received that as well.
Oh, good. Nice work.
So those are the revisions there. So those figures will be corrected in the second addendum that is sent to Douglas and Liddell for their execution.
And so do I interpret this right, that this is the entire fiscal year of 11, basically, starting on April 2 of 10, so it's $105,000 for the whole fiscal year of
Correct.
regulatory support at the PUC?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been very involved, and there'll be a regulatory update at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Questions for Beth? Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back. I'll just say that this is a lot of work for a reasonable amount of money, and it's, every penny is worth it. This guy's worth his weight in gold.
Absolutely.
It's been very helpful.
Good. So with that, I'd take a motion.
So moved.
Without objection, that carries. Great. Next item, then, we pulled C5 and 1 and 4, so I think we're covered on all those items. So now we go to the communications update. Jamie?
Thanks. Well, we've been really busy with the marketing and communications for Marine Clean Energy in the last month. We have officially launched our advertising campaign. What's actually out right now for the public is a small ad in the Larkspur and Sausalito ferry terminal schedules, and we got a great deal on those. They'll be running prints for 6 months. They print 350,000, and 3 months in to the ads, we get to switch the message and the graphic. So we're really excited about that. And also this month, we will be starting a campaign on several other media venues. I've mentioned some of them before, and since we're about to start it, I'm kind of going to leave you guys with a teaser today. We want to keep our ad campaign fresh to the public so that when you see it, it's new and it's not something that you've already been informed about in our meetings. So you'll be seeing us all over Marin shortly, and it'll be a lengthy campaign between 3 and 4 months. And we've developed 3 main messages, a tagline, and we've selected several images that we'll be using throughout the campaign. As suggested by the executive committee, for the first month of the campaign, we'll be using the same message and the same image everywhere to develop some familiarity with the public for the campaign. And then for the remainder, we'll be switching up the images and the ads, so they'll have different messages on different media types. So you'll see us in newspapers and buses and theater ads and the like. Some of the other things that we've been busy with are social media. We now have a Twitter page, and our Facebook has also been staying updated, so we're working on connecting our website with our social media and boosting that with information about the program and also general information about energy efficiency and the like. Yes.
Can I interrupt?
Mm-hmm.
So the Twitter thing, I mean, I'm not totally tapped into Twitter, but
Okay.
what are we sending out on
No.
Twitter, and what do we
You
get
have
in?
to ask who and what is being tweeted.
I was gonna say, who is the
Do we
chief
care?
tweeter?
I mean, I
Yeah.
I don't get it on stuff like this.
Okay, right
Because
now-
you're not baking a cake, and nobody really cares.
Jesus, Sean, you don't live in the 21st century, girl.
Okay, I'm me, Jamie. What is up with Twitter and
Tweet the
MEA?
reality.
Okay, I am the
Come on.
current chief Twitterer, and
Tweeter in chief.
it was basically I had some contact with someone who's an expert in social media, and what they recommended in order to get followers, which is how Twitter works. It's sort of like Facebook, where people follow your profile,
Yeah, I know.
and when you post updates, they can read about it. And one of the main recommendations was an 80%, 20% idea, where 80% of the things you post are not specifically about your business, but are about things that are related. So I've been posting things like, for example, about Good Earth moving. They're about to be moving their store, and they're moving into a much larger store, but they're going to be reducing their carbon footprint and how they're doing that. Tips on how to save energy in the kitchen over the holidays. Things around of those nature, and then also in things about our program, like our feed-in tariff, or, well, we haven't done that yet, but
Who's
hopefully.
reading it? Who's getting these Twitters?
All kinds of people. I mean,
Whatever.
How many followers
Did you get feedback?
well, the Twitter's brand new this week, so I don't have that many followers. But we do have over 800 on Facebook.
Okay.
And every time, I post things every day, and there's always comments
I
about
get the
them.
Facebook
so
part. The Twitter
Yeah.
is where you lost me.
It's just another connection.
Do you get any value out of reading 800 responses? Is it?
No, what's interesting that you can do is you can run a search. So you can run a search for marine clean energy or marine energy, and anyone who's posted any information about it will come up in the search. And so the first time I did that, I found posts from people about marine clean energy. And so if they're positive, it's great. And you can retweet it on your page so everyone else who follows can see this great thing that someone from the public happened to say on their own accord about the business. Or if someone has an issue that they're frustrated with, it's a quick way for us to see that and to address it.
Awesome.
Without that person actually having to call us. So
Okay.
it's just a way to increase communications with our customers and trust, and I honestly think it helps with our brand, and it doesn't take a huge amount of time, so.
I love your
That's
idea
the
of
Twitter.
doing sort of time-relevant tweets, because the idea of getting some tips on how to be more efficient over the holidays, actually, that's intriguing. So you may be the first reason I ever engage in Twitter.
So, listen,
I've been really resisting this.
Don't
but-
put up twinkly lights in your house, is that it? Okay, never
what I
mind.
said.
Right,
cool.
LED.
If they're LED, they're probably okay.
If you have a partridge in your pear tree, it's good to tweet.
Yeah, you need a tweeting partridge.
Oh, my goodness.
And then just a few other updates moving beyond social media. One of the things that we're working on right now and we'll be sending out to have printed early next week is a briefing booklet with information about marine clean energy, CCA in general, and some of the accomplishments that most of our accomplishments that we've had over the last 7 or 8 months, as well as some of the challenges that we've encountered, and we'll be providing that to state legislation and other key stakeholders and people that would be interested in it. We'll also have a copy of the Leno hearing in that, so we'll be distributing that to you as well. And then one other thing is the PowerPoint. It's been a really long work in progress, but it is done, and so you guys will be getting the new PowerPoint next week. And that's it.
Jamie, a couple ones real quick for you. I think maybe by the new year, it would be good for each member of this board to get 5 of those briefing packets to share with their colleagues on the councils. Like, I want to do sort of a new year report to my colleagues at the county about MEA, so I'll need one for myself and 4 to share.
Okay.
And it wouldn't surprise me if all of us as reps to our respective councils might want to do that. And if it's a good-looking briefing book that you're giving the new governor and people up at the state, we ought to do that with our colleagues too. It's been a long time since I've given a real substantive report at the county.
Okay, that's great.
And hopefully we'll have some good refinancing news to share as well. The second question I had was about the customer service issue you were following up on for me. Do you want to share anything about that? That was a person with a billing question and...
Right. I mean, I don't know what you would want, what,
It kind of goes back to this confusion on our bills. How's that going in terms of being sorted out?
Well, the PG&E has not succeeded yet in suppressing the bundled rate factor that still appears on the bill. They have made a little progress as far as setting the dates for which they're going to be doing that. So they said that by December, by the end of December, they will be suppressing the bundled rate for residential E1 customers, which is about 2/3 to 3/4 of our customers. And then they will be able to suppress the rates for the remaining customers after their bill freeze is over, which will be at the end of February, early
Wow.
March.
These guys make the federal government look agile. It's amazing. Okay. I was hoping we were further along. Okay. Ed, other questions for our marketing director? Thank you, Jamie. Great. So I think with this, we can go to our integrated resource planning.
Hey, Beth, you pass the chocolate back.
Sorry, I was talking.
Because, you know, we have to get into
I've been
deep
grabbing on the way by here.
Get some sound.
Perfect timing.
All right. Well, as Dawn mentioned in her director's report, we've got a lot of neat stuff that's going on right now and a lot of stuff that's been accomplished so far this year. And in front of you this evening for your consideration are two really neat new programs that, that staff and the technical committee as well are recommending to move forward with, one of which is a feed-in tariff for the agency, and then the other is a request for proposals for renewable energy projects. And in any case, without further ado, as the agenda item here suggests, these two different programs fall underneath the broad-based heading of integrated resource planning. And that's something that's been really of the utmost importance to this agency as it's moved along. It's reflected in its implementation plan. It's regularly discussed in various committee meetings. And everything that we've really done has been trying to work towards this goal of creating programs and projects that complement one another in order to achieve the long-term goals of the agency, one of which are substantial GHG emissions reductions. The other is 100% renewable supply for MEA customers. Now, to do this is a bit of a balancing act, and these different considerations that are listed here are all important to keep in mind because they all play off of one another a bit. For example, you can't necessarily go out and pay whatever you want for renewable energy because that may put upward pressure on customer rates. Similarly, if you were to do something like that, it might have the effect of encouraging certain customers to make the choice to leave MCE service, which would adversely affect the financial situation of the agency. And so as these different programs are rolled out, it's really important to make sure that we're effectively performing that balancing act. Not only getting what we want, but doing so at a price that allows us to have a sustainable business and financial viability moving forward to do the various other things that we want to do and keep doing. If you go on and move to the next slide, this is one of the slides that I think you've all seen before. I believe it was discussed at the last board meeting in November. And one of the things that's important to consider as you're putting together a supply portfolio is how different resources deliver energy and how those different resources need to be put together in terms of an integrated supply portfolio in order to meet customer energy needs. Of course, there are different profiles that go with each one of these different types of resources, and each has an important role in a supply portfolio. Here I've really picked out renewable energy resources and where these fit in. You can see Down the leftmost column here, that's really the type of profile under which these resources deliver energy, so peak, base load, and intermittent. And you can see the types of resources there in parentheses that typically fall within those different categories, and each one of those resources has its pluses and minuses, has its costs and benefits as well. So these are all important things to keep in mind as you move forward, splicing all of these resources together so you effectively meet the needs of your customers and do so at a price point which allows for rates that are tolerable. So Don mentioned a lot of these things already, so I won't dwell on them here, but these are just some highlights of things that have been accomplished to date by the agency, all of which are consistent with meeting the long-term goals and objectives of MEA. And like I mentioned before, we have two different opportunities for you to consider this evening that dovetail very nicely with these other programs that have already been put in place. And Jamie, if you'll go to the next slide. And as I mentioned, these two different programs are feed-in tariff for local small-scale renewable energy projects. This will provide an opportunity for developers of these resources to contract directly with the agency and do so under a standard offer format. So that will minimize the administrative burden associated with putting these contracts into effect, and there will be virtually no negotiation efforts required to get these deals executed. The other piece of the puzzle here that you'll be considering this evening is a request for proposals for renewable energy projects. This really focuses on larger scale projects in order to meet the longer term supply needs of the agency and move it towards its long-term goal of 100% renewable energy supply. So again here, Dawn has already touched on this in her director's report. Point here is on this slide that these things have been in play for quite some time. The technical committee in particular has given a great deal of thought to this, has taken public comment into consideration in developing these documents, and we've ultimately arrived at two different programs here, which I think the board will find to be incredibly consistent with its goals and objectives, and we'll do a lot to jumpstart renewable power procurement here in the very near future. So go ahead and, so with respect to the FIT, I think, again, you've seen a lot of this before by now. And so what we've got here is we've got a program, like I said, that will allow small-scale, local renewable resources to sell directly to the agency. And this is different than a net energy metering arrangement where somebody would have a PV panel on their house, would use some of that energy, but at times when they weren't using the energy would deliver some into the grid. We already have a program to accommodate that type of arrangement. This is different. This is a pure sales arrangement with all electric output from the facility going to the authority. In this case, the standard offer is applicable for resources that would come online in either 2011, 12, or 13. So there's a 3-year window that we're looking at right now. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the idea that this feed-in tariff will be launched on a pilot basis. Since it's something new to the agency, we want to make sure that we allow sufficient flexibility moving forward to adjust prices, provide additional incentives to developers if need be, and then also expand the program as MEA's customer base grows to allow additional opportunities for developers to participate. At this particular time, if you'll just head back there, at this particular time, we're starting slow, just like we have with everything else, with a 2 megawatt limit on the feed-in tariff program, and then individual projects can be bid up to 1 megawatt each. There's 3 different contract terms that the developer can decide between here, 10, 15, or 20 years. Of course, the projects need to be entirely located within Marin County, and then any CEC eligible renewable resource can subscribe to the feed-in tariff here. So we're not limiting this to any particular technology. And then you'll also have in your board packet tonight the feed-in tariff itself, as well as the applicable standard offer PPA that details the different pricing, which we've analyzed and really kind of determined to be competitive.
So Kirby, let's say some guy in Mill Valley's got a great southern exposure roof. I've been sort of whispering that a feed-in tariff was coming. Can you comment offhand whether he'd be better off, let's say he's got a 4 kW roof, it's a good chunk of roof. Would he be better off buying power from us either as a deep green or a regular customer, light green customer, and then selling power to the agency under the feed-in tariff? Or would he be better off as an NEM customer?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer, and not because I don't want to answer it, but because a lot is dependent upon, one, the rate structure that the customer chooses, and also how they use energy. So if it's somebody that is pretty much exclusively using energy in off-peak hours and is on a time of use rate where they're going to be producing a lot of energy that's going to be put back to the grid under MEA's NEM program, there'd be a big incentive for that customer to take the benefit of the full retail generation rate there. But if the use was different, then you might see that kind of comparative analysis change. So it's really dependent upon how they use energy.
So if we have customer and pals around the county, we could refer them to ask you these kinds of trade-off questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the types of questions that we'd love to answer. And, you know, and I think there's, depending on the type of project, you know, there is an interconnection requirement where the customer would need to be interconnected to the PG&E distribution system in order for this to work. That's also a requirement that's listed both in the tariff and in the PPA itself. So, yeah, subject to those provisions, absolutely.
And then,
Can I?
please.
I'm sorry. You said that the capacity, at least initially in this FIT program, is going to be 2 megawatts.
Right.
And if we come up with 2 candidates that are 1 megawatt apiece, and we accept both of them, the program's full. Is that correct?
Well, initially it's full.
Right.
Initially it's full, but the idea here is that as a pilot program, this particular program would undergo continuous evaluation and reevaluation, and these would all be things that would be regularly discussed at the technical committee, for example, where we could evaluate where we are now versus where we want to be, and if we're fully subscribed and we feel like additional capacity would fit well in our portfolio, then we could certainly raise the cap. So that's something that we have quite a lot of
Do you have
flexibility.
any idea what sort of timeline you would be talking about? Say you got 2 acceptable programs initially, and you're full. How long would it be before we could take on other candidates and other programs?
I think one of the things that we'd want to consider at that point is what our subsequent phase-in approach might be, so we could bring these projects on in concert with the addition of new customers. And that way we could kind of stage this thing and ramp it up in parallel with one another, bringing those resources online to serve the new load. So I think that's really those are the types of things that we want to consider there. So I'm not sure that there's a finite timeline that we'd have.
No, I'm not looking for a finite, I'm just looking for concepts.
But that hopefully that gets to the concept there.
So in other words, on any given first Thursday night of the month, we can expand the program if we need to. There's no technical capacity constraint that we face as an agency to do this.
It would just be a simple, let's just look really quick at what that's going to do to our finances and make sure that we're still within a range that's acceptable. And once we do that, it's as simple as changing a number and a tariff. So.
Let's hope we have that problem. Do you happen to know how big a typical methane digester is? So if we get a couple people like Strauss out in the west part of the county?
You know, that's going to vary widely depending on the available
interconnection.
Well, yeah, depending on the interconnection, but then also on the fuel source as well. So depending on the size of the operation, that could range from something very, very small, so you know, several kilowatts up to well over a megawatt.
Don, do you happen to remember what Albert's?
I think it's about 500 kW.
Okay, yeah. So that's kind of big for Marin, so we won't run into an immediate capacity problem on the program if we get one of those.
No, that's, we've got plenty of room for those types of projects.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Carry on. Thanks.
Okay. So that really hits the high points there for the feed-in tariff. The other document that you have in front of you tonight is a request for proposals for renewable energy projects, which is also very exciting. This really gets to the agency's goal of expanding renewable energy supply as aggressively as possible. And so what we're hoping to do here is go out to the market and see what they can bring to us in terms of opportunities that fit within our financial parameters and also our energy needs. So what we're looking for is responses here by February 4th of next year. So within just a couple of short months, we get to see what the energy industry can bring to us in terms of renewable projects. The RFP expresses a clear preference for locally based resources, and then during the evaluation process, we'll basically degrade scores based on increasing, or decreasing proximity from Marin County. So the idea there is that if you've got a local resource, you'll score higher in that facet of the evaluation process. And at this point in time, we're looking for total capacity of 40 megawatts from any CEC eligible renewable resource, with a 1 megawatt carve out for local photovoltaic solar. And the idea there being is that Don mentioned the solar shares or solar cooperative style program. This would be a resource or group of resources that we could use to jumpstart that program, or to just serve the energy requirements of our customer base without launching that program. It would really just provide us with a lot of flexibility and with some nice high visibility projects that are located right here in Marin. So that's what we're looking for in terms of capacity. Next slide.
Before you go, I'm sorry, is it okay?
Please.
Before you move on from that slide, Kirby?
Yeah.
So we're going to, deadline for response is February 4th. When do we think that these sources will be coming online to serve our needs?
Very good question. What we're looking at right now is we've actually we've noted a 3-year window in which we'll accept projects that will be coming online within that 3-year window. So, and that window is January 1, 2012 through December 31st, 2014. And that lines up really well with our subsequent phase-in plan. And so we don't want to leave it too open-ended, because that really is going to potentially create a really large administrative burden in sorting through these projects that are really in the out years from a planning perspective. And then on the 1 megawatt solar carve-out, we're looking at an 18-month window. Those projects should be easier to deploy, and so narrowing down that timeline a little bit because of the size, and because we could take those projects much sooner than we could larger projects, really made sense there to skinny up that timeline and try to be a little bit more aggressive in getting those as part of our portfolio. So,
Before you move on,
yeah.
I want to comment. I'm just looking here. 1 year ago, from that date, February 4th, 2011, so this year, 2010, I think it was like February 3rd, was supervisor's vote?
Second.
Was it
February
the second?
2nd.
Was it the
It was
4th?
right around, because I remember
The
February
worst day of
4th,
my
and then
life.
we issued, but February 4th, I feel like we also issued our first round of opt-out notices. I don't know, I'm just keying on February 4th. It's immaterial, other than to say, I think we need to recognize that 1 year later, not even 1 year later, we're talking about this
Yeah.
and delivering on it. So I just sometimes think we need to stop and think about that. So
Well, and if you want
congratulations.
to benchmark, which is actually, I think, apropos, February 2nd of this year was the date on which the California Public Utilities Commission certified our implementation plan. So,
Wow.
and that still left some months in between that date, the date on which we began serving customers. So this is a pretty expedited schedule that we're pushing here.
Let the record show that February 4th must be an auspicious day to collect these.
There you go.
That's right.
for various reasons. That's good.
So if you would, Jamie, on the...
Hang on 1 second.
Oh, yeah, of
Director.
course.
Yeah, before you get off of the slide, the 1 megawatt carve out
Mhm.
for photovoltaic, are you envisioning that to be a project or several projects spread throughout the community?
Good question there, and that one certainly deserves clarification. The limits on the 1 megawatt carve-out are a little bit different than they are with the 40 megawatt balance there. The 1 megawatt carve-out will take projects down to 250 kilowatts in size, so smaller projects, so it could be up to 4. And that'll provide some flexibility for potential developers and allow them to get creative in how it is that they place those and potentially bring those for use by MEA. And then on the 40 megawatts, did that answer your question on?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
And I just, I think that if we can sort of have a bias toward 4 of them instead of 1, where we can put them throughout the county.
Okay.
I think that is going to be good for us on a PR level, just because it's if some is good, more is better.
Yeah. And this doesn't in any way preclude a developer from bringing a 1 megawatt or greater photovoltaic project to MEA under the 40 megawatts. So this just allows an opportunity for smaller projects to live in this process, as well as bigger projects.
Great.
So the idea here is flexibility and inclusion, and I think we've accomplished that pretty well. Any more questions on this slide?
Kirby, I'm glad Lou raised that point. The one suggestion I would make, it's perfectly clear how you describe it, but maybe add a little bit of verbiage just to make it clear that the 40 megawatt tranche can include solar, obviously. In other words, the second tranche is not exclusive of that.
Greg, are we going to be okay if we approve this with that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's clear to you, Kirby, what he's
Absolutely.
asking for?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be 2 places where that's at.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
On to the next slide, if you would. Some of this we just touched on, so Lou was ahead of the game a little bit. And here you can see, again, our preference for local resources. We're allowing a lot more flexibility in terms of sizing the projects for locally based resources. So for the 40 megawatts, for the broader based capacity, projects down to 1 megawatt can be proposed locally, whereas outside of Marin County, those projects need to be a little bit bigger, 5 megawatts. So the idea there is, we'll deal with the administrative burden of managing additional contracts, so long as the resources are locally based there. And then, of course, the 250 kilowatt limit that I mentioned for the local PV projects. Minimum contract term of 10 years is what we're requesting. Respondents are more than free to propose longer terms if they like. And then the deal structure can either be a straight power purchase agreement where developer builds project, sells energy to MEA, or a PPA with a buyout option where the developer builds the project, sells the energy to MEA for a certain period of time to take advantage of various tax credits and incentives. And then at the end of those, once those incentives are exhausted, that developer might be interested, as is typically the case with a lot of photovoltaic solar projects. They want to sell that to the buyer of the energy. And the nice thing there is that would be long enough in the future where it would allow MEA plenty of time to plan for that and the financing that would be required in order to make such an acquisition. And
Can I
yes.
stop you there? Are we able to make known to potential bidders the opportunities we have on 3 to 5 different properties for ground mount solar? because, you know, I've had real conversations with Golden Gate Bridge about the Larkspur parking lot. We've got the back 40 at the Civic Center and the parking lot back there and so forth. And I think there literally are 4 sites at the Civic Center that probably get successively more expensive as you move westerly toward the freeway. But these agencies have actually kind of formally indicated their willingness to talk to potential developers about letting them have access to the property. And it just occurred to me that it may not be clear to a developer that they've got a nice big chunk of property that could be available to them. Is there some mechanism we're using to get that word out?
Absolutely. There will be a pre-bid conference, as a matter of fact, and I think that might be a really great opportunity to bring some of those locations to the attention of developers and allow them to then go ahead and pursue those conversations if it makes sense based on their projects.
So could I just encourage you and Dawn to make sure you close the loop with Jim Swindler at the bridge and Jim Farley at the county, just to make sure they're totally comfortable with that. But I think if you do make that information available at the bidders conference, that would be a good move. Because at least what they've represented to me is that they're totally open to the discussion. But they may be assuming it's going to be us developing rather than private corporations coming to talk to them. We need to make sure they're comfortable with that. But that'd be a hell of an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, somebody ought to probably have a conversation with the folks at the Good Earth and the new owners of Fair and Stone to gauge their interest in making themselves available. I mean, with the redevelopment of the Albertson site, I think that we've got a real possibility out there. And I have also been made aware of a possible opportunity out at St. Vincent's. And it would be probably a good idea to get a hold of either Larry Kenning, who is a planning consultant in the county that we use in Marin, who mentioned, I mean, in Fairfax, who mentioned it to me. They apparently had an entire plan put together that had St. Vincent's blessing, and then the money went away. And when I was talking to him about these opportunities, he seemed very interested. So a word out to St. Vincent's or Larry Kenning, who I think is based in Sausalito, and I can get you his number if you give me a call, would be a couple of other opportunity sites.
Cool. Thank you, Lou.
And just to close out the RFP discussion, at least from the presentation's perspective here, what we're really talking about at the end of the day is a lot of renewable energy, potentially. Right now, the agency's made a commitment to customers that it will provide a minimum of 25% RPS qualifying renewable energy, and this would get a heck of a lot more, for lack of a better term. And you can see here that based on the different types of resources that could respond under this solicitation, we could get 80,000 megawatt hours to as many as 330,000 megawatt hours of renewable output from resources responding under this RFP. And that's a pretty big deal. And of course that would certainly accommodate the expansion of the program, which is planned, of course, and also the increased renewable energy needs that would go with that expansion. So a lot of exciting stuff. I think there's one more slide, and this is just just kind of to wrap things up here. So the board is aware these documents have undergone legal review. Outside counsel specializing in power purchase agreements has reviewed the FIT standard offer contract. Those revisions have been incorporated. General counsel has reviewed the RFP to make sure that the interests of the agency are kept in mind. The technical committee at its recent meeting recommended that we move forward with both of these programs, and then staff here is recommending that the board consider moving forward with these two programs this evening as well. So.
Awesome. So now into the technicalities. Any board questions?
When is the, do you have a date set for the bidders conference?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll just read off a couple of key dates here that are in the RFP. You can find these on page 7 of the RFP, and then again, these are listed on page 12 as well. So as I previously noted, I'm planning on releasing the RFP really as soon as possible here. And with a pre-bid meeting scheduled for January 10th. So we're going to go ahead and get through the holiday season, let people regroup a little bit before we have that meeting. That'll be at 11 a.m. in one of the rooms here, I believe. I think one of those, we're working on reserving it right now. The deadline for any questions related to the RFP will be 4 days later on January 14th, and then staff will post answers to those questions on MEA's website. Responses will be due on February 4th, 2011, with shortlist notifications coming on the heels of that on March 1st of 2011. We'll be conducting shortlist interviews the following week, with negotiations commencing shortly thereafter, and targeting the execution of any agreements that are determined to be suitable for this agency in the May to June timeframe, with delivery beginning in that 3-year window that I mentioned between January 1st of 2012 and December 31st of 2014. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, first, let me say, I haven't seen you folks in some time, so it goes to show if you don't show up, they take your name off the letterheads. You might want to put City of Sausalito back on the letterhead.
That's true. Ouch.
Otherwise, I don't have to come anymore, which makes my schedule free. So thanks for that. So the other side of it, being I haven't been here in quite some time.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Glad you're back, pal.
For various reasons, I haven't been here, namely my sanity. But so I would be the first to admit that a politician should never do this, that I don't know exactly what you're doing. But I can say, one question is, what's the time frame of hiring your executive director? I have no idea. I haven't spoken to the recruiter. What's the time frame? Because in my opinion, you shouldn't do any of this before you hire somebody, because that's going to be their world. The easiest thing to do in stepping into a job is say, look what you gave me, and I don't have it. You gave me this boatload of stuff that you started the RFP process before me. You set the boat moving, and you want me to run this ship where you have the customer service side and you want the development side, and you've already set sail without me. So that would be my 2 cents about the fit thing. Is great. I think it's certainly a wonderful thing. But with this, my concern would be that whatever your plans are as an organization to hire someone, and but you put in that this job description necessarily. If you set out these RFPs, and no disrespect to anyone in the technical committee, who I always forget who's on there, so I don't know. I'm sure they're well qualified, but from a timing perspective.
Do you want the update?
Sure. Okay. I asked a question and went off. So
I actually want to ask Greg a question. I have a little ad hoc committee of 3 on the board that has been managing the hiring process and the investigation. If I have an offline conversation with Jonathan to get him up to date, that creates 4 people who I'm talking to. Is that legit if I do that?
It's okay because it's still less than a quorum, so it's our group, 8 members, quorum's 5.
Okay.
So you can have one single conversation outside the committee.
So Director, I owe you an apology because I was
it's fine.
being too, so I need to give you a good detailed update, but for the sake of the whole board.
Well, if there's a time frame that's already been discussed that you're looking at, that's all I'm looking at.
Well, the short answer is right now that hiring process is on hold.
Okay, all right.
And so part of it is we want to see what the PUC does at the beginning of the new year with rate setting.
Okay.
And Don, I don't know if you've had a chance to get with Director Leon on the cash
No,
flow.
it's been my phone.
So Dawn and I need to give you an update, and we ought to try to make that a priority, but
Well, I can
suffice
talk
it-
to her and not put him in any,
Well, it sounds like I can, because I'm only
Yeah.
talking to two others
Right.
anyway on the,
well, I don't want
except
to.
in public when I give general updates like this, but right now our hiring effort is,
It's
at
just
the
something to
moment.
think about. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, the timing of things. But
okay. Any other questions?
no, that's the only question. I have some comments, but that's all.
Technical questions before I go to the public? Okay, before we go to the public, the one thing I want to say is, Damon, I want to thank you as chair of the TechCom and the other members of the TechCom, which I must confess, I know Barbara, you're on there, right?
Dick.
And Dick Collins.
And Lou.
In lieu.
And Lou. So I want to thank you guys. You guys have done a ton of work on these things and really appreciate all the thought. I know you've had to do a lot of email with different citizens on this stuff, so
Which has been very helpful.
really appreciate your hard work on this.
From the public.
Good job. So members of the public, comments on the, please.
Hi, pardon my voice, which is missing. Bob Spofford, Sustainable Centerville. I have a comment on the feed-in tariff, not on the substance of the proposal, but on how we go about managing this. This is a new animal. There's nothing quite like this right now anywhere in the area of the state, as far as I know. And appropriately, we sort of position this as a beta test. But the success of a beta test is almost entirely dependent on the degree of proactivity from the person doing the testing. So I would suggest that managing this going forward, we need to do a lot of outreach. I mean, there are two kinds of players out there. There are the kind of hypothetical people you mentioned, Charles, you know, basically an amateur, if you will. And if you look at our application form, if you look at the paperwork from the ISO that they have to go through for the interconnect, that's pretty daunting stuff for somebody who's just dealt with SPG, about a 10 kilowatt system being installed or something like that. On the other hand, there are people in the state doing small self-generation projects under SPIG and things like that, and they're sort of savvy about the world of these kinds of things. And I would say we got to get out to both of those kinds of people and say, hey, how does this deal look to you? What do you need from us? Because it's not just going to be about the rates. It could very well be that there's a total sticking point that's one little piece of procedure that we could change, but we won't know it if we aren't asking people. I'm especially thinking about the smaller projects, again, the amateurs, not the Albert Strausses, who can, you know, with 500 kilowatts, he can hire a power guy and help make the switch from SPIG, which is I assume what he's in now, to you know, our feed-in tariff. But the guy with 10 or 20 kilowatts, the best thing we might do is have a part-time assistant to help him through the paperwork. I mean, if you know your way around that ISO paperwork, I'm sure it's like falling off a log, but, you know, I've got a degree in electrical engineering, and I wouldn't know where to begin on that stuff. So I'm just saying, I know a year from now our feed-in tariff will look very different from what we have now. And the difference may be entirely in little procedures, not necessarily the numbers. And it's incumbent on us to go out and find the people and find out what we need to do to make it work. Because we just sort of wait for people to put up their hands. You know, we may get a few, we may not. People may just sit there and say, well, PG&E's trying to take these people over the coals. I don't have the time or money to sit around while PG&E tries to block this thing, you know. And you got to work with people like that and get them to understand that maybe that's not the case. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But
I'm here.
No, it is not.
Thank you, Bob.
yeah, you get the idea. Thank you.
Good points.
Well, Barbara, it's a race.
Oh, let me just
Lady first.
say something. Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, the general rate case that we were in, one of the things that we managed to get from the settlement, such as it is to have the maps available with an indication on them about what the interconnect likelihood would be, which is a valuable thing. You would see where the substations hit and how big the lines are and maybe how much they're carrying. At least you could call them and say, this line, you know, is where we want to put something. You think we could get it on there, and how much would that interconnect be? Because that whole problem, which we were talking about before, was that they're going to, you know, give you some kind of funny number like they gave this one woman of $50,000, and then they came back and said $500,000 and we want it by the end of the month. So the developer, that would knock the developer out of the, you know, completely off of their game, and so we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And with at least having where the maps are, at least being able to go to them and say, okay, give me a straight answer about what's happening on this line, then we would get a little better idea in advance. And it probably would be good to have somebody who can help people through this process, because we, you know, that this is something that we don't want them to have to do on their own.
Good
Thank
point.
My name is Charles Schultz. I'm from West Marin, and this is the 7th meeting consecutively that I've been to.
Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. I couldn't echo strongly enough Mr. Leone's comment that this is ill-considered and ill-conceived. Just one problem with, say, a feed-in tariff is it cites these things at random ahead of the meter. So under local powers plan, you would have had 5 megawatts of solar in the first year, being 2011, and that's cited at the load. Been in San Rafael and on the 1-1 corridor at businesses who have been using it on site, so there isn't any issue of interconnect, because this is the intelligent way to approach using renewables to make them cost effective. Now, that's the ultimate issue here. Albert Strauss is my neighbor. Local power is headquartered on the Strauss Ranch. Albert Strauss has signed an agreement last month with PG&E to sell his electricity to them. And what you have here is 2 projects for landfill gas in Yuba County and Solano County that are already in advanced stage of development. So what happened to localization? What happened to the trajectory that you set for yourselves and the goals that you set for yourself and how you were going to get there? Now you've moved away from that, towards away from localization, away from real targets and toward arbitrary targets, and the problems there, you know, are even more profound. The original RFP had a provision for financing mechanisms that would be provided by revenue bonds. That's gone. It also had permitting support. Now, this is the land of NIMBYs. It's very easy to do something in Yuba County. I even heard reference to landfill gas in Tulare County. I had to get on a map. It's very difficult to do those things in Marin. So if you don't give people permitting support and you don't help them finance, you're not going to get any localization here, because it's going to come back too expensive. And you have to have these considerations in the RFP and have accounted for them as a part of this larger goal that you set for yourself. And you create a strategy, you lay it out in the RFP, and that's how you get there. So my concern here is that you change course, you have a new plan. Has this been discussed? And why do it? Why not go back to what you set out and try and get there? Because you can. Be very successful. So, you know, Albert's gone. You're losing the locals. You've lost the idea of localization, and you've created the conditions in which your RFP, you won't get any more localization. And the solar you do build here will be very expensive. This is what PG&E does. Puts out PPAs, it wants to do renewables, and then it comes back and says, oh, they're too expensive. So the commitment here is not just, let's go buy stuff in Tulare County. The commitment here is for localization. That's where we started. That's where I think you should get back. And local power, obviously, has been supportive, I think, very much of MEA, continue to support you. But I think that you need to consider the direction that you seem to have drifted into and delay this until you have, until June at least. If the people on this board are not going to be here, why saddle your new director or the new group of people coming in June with an ill-considered and shoddily thrown together RFP, which has been, oh, my last point. Energy efficiency, demand technology, where is that? Navigant, in their feasibility study, paid almost no attention to energy efficiency. This is the low-hanging fruit. This is the easiest thing that you can do to reduce your procurement from Shell, and it's gone. It's not in this RFP. It was in the first one, not here. So I think that without demand response technologies, you will not create interoperability. You will not be able to integrate these resources, and you will not be able to localize. Local power will not be able to bid on this without energy efficiency and demand technology. So just like Albert Strauss, it'll be another local business that's forced out of this process because these considerations haven't been made. So I don't know how the hourglass is going there, but.
You're done.
Okay, thank you
Thanks,
very
Charles.
much.
Chair. Director.
No, I wanted you to hear this.
Oh. Do you have a comment for me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
We have taken a different tack than local power suggested. And, you know, when this all started out, I was a big proponent of going with local power. And I had meetings with local power. And I have to say, and you epitomize it every time you get up and talk to us, that I have never seen an organization screw up so badly in the public relations aspect of trying to do business with another agency. And so it gets a little difficult time and again to hear how you can't work with us, as opposed to hearing how you can, given the direction that we went. The fact of the matter was, we came to the conclusion that given the political climate we were in when we launched, local power's proposal was much higher risk than we were going to be able to hang our membership with. And so we didn't go that way. And we had good reason for not doing that. If local power really wants to be a player in this, you need to take a look at what you've done and figure out how it can match with where we're going. And I wish you would do that.
Can I respond to Mr. Tremaine?
I don't want to get into a back and forth right here. Why don't I invite you guys to talk offline?
I'd love to do that.
That would be really helpful. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
Charles. Appreciate that. I have a couple little technical questions, but I want to offer my colleagues. Let's do a round of questions, if any, and then come in for comments. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, sure. Just some quick ones. The generation dates and the 5 megawatt kind of in place. It sort of tilts. So
Where are you at, John?
It's page 4 of 30 of the RFP. So that you're sort of saying you need to have something already up and going. If you're coming in, is it of the 40? You want one, you're looking at multiple, not just one proposal for 40 megawatts, right? You're looking at multiple, could be somebody proposing 5, 10, not just somebody with 40 altogether, right?
Absolutely.
But inside that proposal, you want at least one where 5 megawatts is already up and going. Is that the way to read this, or is that
No.
at least 5 megawatts of installed capacity?
No, the idea here is that we'll take projects of various sizes. So 5 to 40 megawatts outside of Marin County.
So 5 is the minimum.
5 is the minimum.
Perhaps.
Right, that's what I'm just saying. The way it's worded is a little, it says installed, to me that reads it's gotta be up, it's gotta be installed, not part of a spec thing. So that's good clarification. And then the only other question I had was just the time frame for turnaround is,
Actually, can I stop here one
Sure,
second while you
sure.
find that?
yeah.
Kirby and John, I read that to be okay, though. It's the second bullet point on page 4. I read that inside Marin, it's a project of a size larger than 1 megawatt installed generating capacity, meaning that at the time of power delivery, not necessarily installed as of today and already running, but but Jonathan and I are saying two different things. Are you worried that the word installed is confusing to potential bidders?
It may not be
it
as
the way
a term of art,
Jonathan?
I don't know. So,
Yeah, I don't think to a developer it's
Okay.
going to be
That's fine.
confusing.
Okay, so what it means is prospectively, you will have
Right.
1 megawatt of installed capability at the time of execution of contract. Okay, so we're cool on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Carry on, sorry about that. Just want to make sure we're
But
real
how
clear.
aggressive a time frame do you think that response time and all that, given?
I think that it's certainly, it's reasonable. It's going to take a competent developer with a larger project in order to meet the timelines here.
Right.
And that's certainly what I think we're interested in looking at here are competent developers. So, yeah, it's I think it's reasonable, but it's going to require somebody that knows what they're doing.
Okay.
I'll hit you with a couple, and maybe that'll trigger some more. Have you had a chance to, the subject, somebody said, maybe it was Bob, who mentioned that we ought to be aggressive getting the word out to developers like Borrego Solar and Sun City and Solar City and all the key players. And I know you guys have been building a list of people who've been emailing in, and they're going to get copies of the RP. Are you also planning to do some outreach to some of the big players who might be good partners with the county on some of that ground mount area and stuff like that? Now, we have to be careful because there's certain passivity rules that we have to honor so we're not giving anybody an unfair advantage in a bidding process. But I guess, what's the sweet spot between making sure everybody knows that we're looking for bids and all this stuff and there's opportunity to do joint deals?
Yeah, we've gone over the distribution list for this pretty carefully, and that includes all of the unsolicited interest that we've received to date. So anyone along the way that's expressed an interest in doing business with this agency will receive a copy of the RFP. And then also we, of course, flagged a lot of the kind of usual suspects / key players in the industry, as well as trade publications and various associations that are targeting or focused on renewable energy to bring this to the attention of their members. So I think we've got a pretty well-rounded distribution list so far, so I'm very hopeful that this RFP will find its way to the people that would be interested in doing business.
And we'll drop a press release to all the local papers too? Good? Because who knows who might read those instead of the trade? Okay.
Yeah, and I think once we issue this, I think we do need to be careful that we don't target specific outreach to particular companies.
Yeah, no unfair advantage.
Yeah.
A good blanket announcement. Okay, good. And then someone raised the question of whether we've been able to run this by companies in the trade already. We rely pretty heavily on your industry expertise already, but did you get a chance to run this by any corporate experts out there who could give us any tips that we got something wrong?
As far as if we got something wrong, I don't know, John.
Did you talk about the RFP itself?
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that there could be a little minor feature in our requirements or contracting paperwork that causes a big pain for people. Have we had a chance to run it by any corporate types?
I have not done that, admittedly, but what I have done is, it's been an agendized item here for a while now, so we brought it to the attention of players in the industry, and they're very excited about it.
Ooh, that's a good sign.
So, that I can say. But yeah, it's not anything that we've circulated in advance.
And I mean, this is the first RFP that Kirby and I have been involved in.
Yeah.
And so it's not, this isn't being created for the first time.
Yeah.
A lot of this is very routine, boilerplate. So
Okay.
we're pretty confident that.
And then once we're through the bidding time benchmarks, if we do find something that's wrong, we can always do a rebid or something else if we learn.
Yeah, there's flexibility built into the RFP to update and amend, append at our discretion. And we'll make potential bidders aware of that again in the pre-bid meeting. And we'll post any changes, it's all mentioned here in the RFP as well. We'll post any changes on the website so that these will be readily available.
Good. Director Crum?
Kirby, of these big players that you're anticipating might be interested in providing energy to us, to whom do they currently sell their product?
A lot of them will sell to municipal utilities. They'll sell to the investor-owned utilities as well.
And what incentive will there be for them to switch to us?
A lot of it will be the ease of the contracting process and not having to deal with a highly bureaucratic and very kind of legal intensive organization like a utility. So I think
Like PG&E.
Yeah. So our ability to be nimble, I think, will be very intriguing for these developers because we'll be able to be much more timely in getting one of these deals moved along, subject to meeting our needs.
Just for the sake of my assumptions and scaling, is it fair to say that even a site like the Corral back behind the Veterans Hall, is that a feed-in tariff candidate because even an area that large is still under the 1 megawatt threshold for solar? Or could somebody like that be big enough that they're actually relevant for this RFP?
That site is pretty large, and I think that would be 1.5 to 2 megawatts, just a rough guess.
So just on the borderline?
Yeah.
Okay. And if somebody's able to do different styles throughout that Marin Center campus, then I guess it would add up to an even bigger number. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And then the last one I had was Charles brought up this question of interoperability and sort of, again, that philosophy of integration with an approach. Was there anything in his testimony that causes you any concern as we get ready to authorize these two programs?
No, not at all. I think, as we did with the original solicitation that was issued by the agency for general power supply, we look at these things very closely as to how they all fit together. And now that we have other programs in place, those are just other considerations that need to be made in this evaluative process as to how these things all fit together. We certainly realize that we can't serve the entirety of an energy portfolio or energy demands with PV resources or wind resources alone. It takes a number of different types of resources to do that, and that's what we'll be looking closely at when these responses are received to make sure that everything fits together, complements the FIT, complements the NIM program, that we don't step on our toes in this process.
Thank you.
I think that it would be good to make the statement that despite what Mr. Schultz had to say, we have not abandoned by any stretch of the imagination the local generation concept. And pardon us for wanting to work with people who can finance themselves.
Yeah, and that really gets to the point of wanting to balance what ultimately may be bid as the energy price for a project, and then the risk to the agency as well of committing to a considerable long-term financing. And at this point in the agency's life cycle, it makes a lot of sense to us that we continue going down this prudent path of not overextending ourselves, and really working down that path and doing this incrementally as we've done in the past, and just being responsible. So right now, the most responsible thing to do is to push that burden back on the developer so that we don't expose the agency to that risk some point down the road. Hopefully, we'll be in a better position to do that, and we'll be able to bring our own financing to the table and drive down those costs. But right now, the approach that makes sense is asking the developers to do that on their own behalf.
Director comments? No more questions? And I guess what I'll do is I'll ask for a motion on each of these in turn. I think we ought to take individual action.
Kirby, do you think with, and it's good to hear Lou's comments, because I would agree with them 100% that, you don't want to, you want to encourage localization, and that's all good, but you got to deal with somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. It's just not worth it in this industry to deal with. It's just too many moving parts for the average Joe to put together, and you said it yourself, but that's the reality of it. And otherwise, it'll be a mess, and you will have no time to do anything else but to run around and deal with these guys, because they'll just chew your time up from here to Sunday. Not these guys, developers, like the guy who's doing it out of his house kind of developer. So it's just too many parts for those guys to stay away from them. But given that you're looking, this is more I'm looking for your comment, is have people sort of, and this is just I'm not aware, usually there's the next level up. People kind of have been running around just because they do it for a living, and they know what potential areas or resources or sites exist. Whether they're under some sort of contract or not is something altogether differently. Do you think that exists enough in Marin County? They're not people who live here, but I mean people who have knowledge of what's going on in this area, that they're well-heeled folks who have some idea what the potential is for local generation, so that they could meet this kind of a time frame. So, the guy who's in a small firm who, you think that is out there, there's been enough buzz, and
Yeah.
so people have beaten the bushes enough to know where these sites are.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there's been a couple of different studies on that front. So some of that information is just kind of out there for the taking.
Right.
Even if people don't currently have it, they can go get it.
Okay. And as far as somebody responding...
Can I tag on with
Sure.
another piece of an answer to that?
Yeah.
That said, there is a challenge. For example, this morning I was watching the videotape of the Planning Commission where NextEra was simply trying to get some Met towers approved to study wind potential at a site near Dillon Beach in West Marin, and Bob was there. I loved your statement, Bob.
Bob is
But
always there.
It's running into a brutal NIMBY reaction, and that proposal just to put 2 Met towers up to study wind capacity there is on appeal, coming to the Board of Supervisors. It may even be next week or the week after, so it's coming soon. And so I was just trying to prep up on the homework, and so it ain't easy being green. And I know wind, for example, in Marin is not universally loved by any stretch, and I think I'm gonna have a boardroom full of Audubon and EAC members from West Marin. So that I think there are a lot of people prospecting, looking for good sites and opportunity, and I just wanted to make sure you heard, Kirby, that the wind thing is far from ready. It won't meet these deadlines, because they've got a couple years of study to go, but they'll be in a future tranche of opportunity with us, hopefully, if they survive. It's stunning how, different Marin is from everywhere else, as you can imagine, well. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, that some are well-known, some have been studied, some are in the process of being studied, and there's a long way to go for some others.
My perspective is we can create the opportunity. We can provide an offer out there who want to purchase this power. It's really up to the developer to figure out how to get it done. I mean, otherwise, if we're going to go and develop a project, we might as well develop them
On our own.
Keep them, right?
That's right.
So I think we need to understand that there is a burden on these folks. They're in it to make money, and if they're competent, then they should be able to get this done. If, we have, based on experience, we're 6 months down the line, and I'm thinking particularly of the feed-in tariff here, if we don't have any response, then, we can take another look at if maybe we need to do something a little bit differently. But, I think these are all legitimate issues, but I don't think we have the resources to solve them.
That's right.
Well, that's why you pay these guys, because they run around and put all these pieces together. That's why they actually deserve to make some money, because it's a pain, it takes forever. The question I had is more the first responding to the 2 points, whatever that guy's name was that brought up earlier about the basically, industrial revenue bond or some bond financing, and I forget the other one, permitting help, which is sort of what Charles is saying. I mean, it goes back to the same thing, that someone could come back in their proposal, it does honestly, and say, hey, this is what I would, I'll meet your requirements for your RFP, but I would want these 3 things, you to go to the county Marin and use it as under their bonding authority to issue. They could come back as that part of their proposal. You're not going to reject it out of hand. It'll go through the process. Same thing if they come back and say, help me at the permitting process X, Y, and Z. They're free to request that.
Yeah, and if that's part of their financing plan, for example, they can certainly elaborate on that.
Right.
And we'll evaluate that based on its merits.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Okay. Board member comments, a motion? What's your pleasure?
I'll comment.
Go ahead, Sean.
Damon. I just wanted to say that I think the work that's been done here is remarkable, going back to that earlier February date. And so I also want to just echo, maybe in a slightly different way than Lou put it, although I highly respect your commentary. You know, I think that all of us, I think it's really important for local power to understand we don't disagree with the vision that they have set forth in terms of fully integrated renewables and localization of power. That's what we're doing here. We happen to have a divergence of opinion on process, and I'm really clear that the most important thing that this agency can do is to remain solvent and to survive.
Absolutely.
And to make it through that eye of the needle as we continue to redivert everything we have, by the way, to regulatory support. So, you know, it's like, it's time for everybody to get a little real here. And so, you know, I appreciate Mr. Schultz and everything else, but I kind of wanted to say to him, so exactly who's going to pay for all of the support that you would like us to provide? We don't have that bandwidth, and so we had to make some tough decisions, and I want to just hand it to our staff for going through every single scenario, down to the dollar, on what our options are. And so I am right behind our cautious, methodical, business-related approach to this, and I know we're going to get there with respect to local power. That's exactly why we're all here. So congratulations, Damon, and I'm ready to make a motion when you guys are.
God, what happened to you people in the 5 months I've been gone?
Yeah.
I should never come again. You guys will be right down running perfectly.
Here we are. We are.
Show up anymore.
You need to join our
Jesus.
Yeah, we've been going to church.
If only you'd known you had such influence from
But not
afar.
being here.
I don't know, Lou built up a head of steam. While you
Well, see, he's mad, I'm kumbaya, but we're all saying the same thing. We are all saying the
I'm
same
going to
thing.
combine the two.
All right, all right.
I
Okay,
just have a question to ask before you get to the motion aspect of it. So the one thing you gotta be prepared with this is if you get out there and you just don't get what you want, and you feel like there's no risk of doing that at this point, because sometimes you put out an RFP and you get back zilch, or you put out for an RFP and you don't take anything, you set your table for the next X number of period. People say that agency, they're a bunch of wahoos, they don't know what they're doing, they put out a bad RFP, or an RFP they just didn't like what they got back. Is there the risk of that, but is it worth taking regardless?
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the head there. I think there is always a risk of that. When you're offering something up, it's outside of your control at that point. You're expecting somebody to respond to it. But what we have here is something that I think will be very desirable to a potential renewable developer or group of renewable developers. And so I find it incredibly unlikely that we would get shut out on something like this. In fact, I think that we'll get a robust response. We'll have several things to choose from. So, yeah,
But,
I don't see that as being a risk.
And then at the end of it, do you know, because sometimes these things, you just keep extending it because there's likelihood you'll get a lot of moving parts that you can't resolve in the time frame that you want. And is there the risk of, because this is, it's not like one person who's the head honcho making the call on these things and everyone has to get on board. Is there the risk of that here? And is that just, people know that that's inherent in doing business with sort of more of an agency-like entity? I mean, if you extend the RFP, like a lot of people don't want to, if you keep extending it, they say, I don't want to deal with it anymore because I have so much time and they're dragging me on for.
Yeah, I think, comparing doing business with MEA to, let's say, PG&E, a developer, there's a huge advantage with us. There's some disadvantages too, but one of the large advantages is that, we're autonomous, self-regulated. You do a deal with PG&E as a developer, first you have to go through their sort of army of lawyers. And then you have to take that deal, once you've got it done, to the CPUC. So that could sit there a year. Meanwhile, the developer can't be financing, they can't really get started on the thing. So that's a massive advantage that we have. So yeah, I mean, we do have probably some issues, but I think we've got a pretty clean process. And I think the next agenda item, we're going to be talking about 2 PPAs that have been negotiated, are going to be before you for approval. And I think that's a really good illustration of how this agency can move quickly and efficiently and really procure it more efficiently than PG&E can.
The other thing that gives me hope, if I reflect on the RFP from a year back, we got 11 megawatts of solar in one of them, and 6 to 8 megawatts of wind and solar in another one, and those were in bids we rejected. Turns out they didn't compete with the broker power, but there's stuff out there looking for a home, and I assume we're open to things that already exist, where it's a sales transaction of existing available power. Okay. Yeah, so I'm hopeful, although I know that there's vicissitudes in this marketplace where people think they've got something coming online and then they hit a new regulatory barrier and can't get operational. So we will have to hedge our risk too, as we assume we have a done deal with somebody only to find out they can't get financing or something if it's something new. So it's a legit point, but I think our risk is low in terms of being shut out too.
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about that, is that you don't get what you want at the end of the day.
Can I tie up a few points now?
Please. I hope it includes a motion. We'll take the feed-in tariff first.
Sure,
I'll
make the motion.
culminate in that, but then you do the next one if you want.
Whatever. No,
Okay.
rock on then.
First of all, absolutely, I think the fact is that we moved cautiously and very smartly to achieve these programs, to get them this far. At the same time, though, we've been very aggressive. And in fact, I think we've been on fire in terms of how we move forward with these. The bottom line is, if we all reflect back to the original RFP, the public justifiably raised issues with the fact that we went with a large out-of-state supplier to meet phase 1 of our objectives. We said at that time the longer-term vision was to develop local sources, contract with local renewables. We are now at that point where we're doing that, and frankly, we're only just beginning. We will continue to refine these programs as needed, and as if to further refute Mr. Schultz, I had a conversation with Don recently, before even hearing from him. Our next technical committee meeting is going to be on demand-side technology. We're staying one step ahead of the naysayers. So in this particular instance, I again want to thank Kirby for your hard work and staff, fellow members of the technical committee, the public that was instrumental in refining both of these initiatives, as well as our board members this evening, who as always are even providing further great input. So this is step 1, but I think it is, as was stated right at the beginning, part of our integrated vision to bring these different proposals together. So, good job, everyone. With that, I'll move to approve the FIT program initially.
Second.
There is a second. Other discussion, other comments on the?
Just to Jonathan's point, the worst thing that could happen is that the RFP laid an egg. Wouldn't cost us a thing, and it would be a lesson learned. And if that's the worst thing that happened, we'd learn from it and we'd move on.
Well said. Before I call the question, I'll just add, and I think it's sort of restating what so many of you have already intoned tonight. I'm really grateful to hear my colleagues saying it in your own words. I was reflecting the other day that it was a year ago right now, I was sitting in my house for an entire weekend writing the response to the grand jury. after they flattened us with an early report. And I remember some of the issues, and it actually relates to what Mr. Schultz brought up. There are two key things in there that I remember very keenly about that experience. One was that so much of the criticism of what MEA was trying to do was an abstract argument in advance of seeing what the market could actually do. He says you can't get it done, you'll get bad prices, it'll be more expensive, and she says, no, it'll work, let's give the market a chance. And I'm so proud of this agency because what we're doing is testing our business hypotheses with responses from the market. And what we're doing is we're letting capitalism build an integrated resource plan project by project in an incredibly responsible way. And I'm deeply grateful for you guys on staff for your common sense, practical business approach to these things that's building the very vision that you just mentioned, that this board laid out 4 years ago, you know, in the vision of CCA and Marin. We want all these things, but the mistake we didn't make was trying to do it all at once with a massive dose of taxpayer risk. We're doing it business by business, project by project. And I'm so proud of this agency, not only for doing it that way in a very practical sense that competes in the market with the market realities we face to meet the constraints of what we charge our customers, we're also doing it without a massive lift from the taxpayer. And we're doing it fast.
Yeah.
And I know it's
we're not the communists they said we were?
That's right. And so I loved hearing what you guys have all said tonight, that we are actually building a philosophy of integration in just the way this agency advertised it wanted to do with the vision of CCA from the beginning, but we're doing it in a practical manner. Yeah. And I'm just so proud of this agency. I'm so proud of you, Dawn. Thank you. Your leadership, it's just, we're rocking. And so I'm really grateful, and thank you again, Damon, for your leadership on the TechCom. If there's nothing further, I'll call a question. Is there any opposition to the motion to approve the feed-in tariff program? Hearing none, that passes. And I'll take unless there's other comments in advance, I'll take a motion on the RFP for renewable power supply.
I'll move the RFP.
Second.
Any comments? Enough said?
You betcha.
Any opposition? None. That carries. Congratulations, you guys. Oh, and here come 3 more megawatts.
I know. Just keeps rolling.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about 3 more megawatts, actually 3.2 megawatts. And you know, if I could just take a quick diversion too, hearing a lot of the discussion today, I think we ought to also refer back to the implementation plan that really, you know, this board adopted as essentially the general plan for the agency and how it's going to proceed, how it's going to build an integrated resource plan. And it's probably been a while if that anyone's looked at that, if anyone has indeed looked at that, but we're doing exactly what that plan talks about doing. So I just want to make that point. So what I get to talk about this evening, very excited about 2 power purchase agreement opportunities. If we can just advance the slide, Jordy, I'd appreciate that. When the board had its goal, its mid-year goal-setting session back in August, we talked about resource planning generally, and we talked about a number of essentially tools that the agency can use to procure renewable resources. And so as we start to, or as we engage in the resource planning and procurement process, we need to consider our needs as the program's going to expand to phase 2, and also as our existing contracts expire. We've got resources through the Shell agreement, but that's a 5-year agreement, so we need to look beyond that. So we talked about various channels. We talked about a RFP, which obviously we're doing. We talked about the feed-in tariff. We also talked about the opportunity for just bilateral negotiations as we become aware of projects that are a good fit, that we can go ahead and negotiate those agreements outside of any RFP. And really that's what we have before you today. There are 2 landfill gas to energy projects that we became aware of, and we have worked with the ad hoc contracts committee over the last couple of months, discussing those projects, got the green light to go ahead and attempt to negotiate agreements to purchase output from those projects, and those are on the agenda now. The projects themselves are 2 similarly sized landfill gas to energy projects in Northern California. These are at existing landfills. They're each 1.6 megawatts, so relatively sized, but good size for our current stage of development. And they both will be coming online next year in August and September, respectively. Now, if you're not familiar with the technology, a landfill gas to energy project, all landfills create methane. The methane has to be disposed of because primarily it's a hazard. So there's essentially 2 ways of disposing it. One is to just flare it off, and the other is to use that methane as fuel, run it through a generator, and produce electricity. So the generator there's a picture of it there. This is a Caterpillar. Both these projects are really essentially identical, they're just in different locations. Caterpillar reciprocating engine that burns the gas and produces electricity with the gas that would otherwise just be flared up and wasted. The Ostrom Road site, that project is in Yuba County, in Wheatland. It's produced about 12,500 megawatt hours a year of qualifying renewable energy, projected to be online at the end of August next year. The second site is in Solano County near Vacaville, and that's the Hay Road site. And that one's expected to be online at the end of September of next year. Go ahead. This is a map showing the 2 projects. You can see kind of the call-outs there. The Hay Road there down in Vacaville, and the Ostrom Road is up a bit kind of north of the Sacramento area. So relatively close projects, fitting really within the definition of local, at least what this agency has used in the past in terms of RFPs, which is Northern California. These are fairly close in.
I think we said 200 miles, right?
I think we actually talked about the whole NP15 zone.
Okay.
We let go of that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not in our hearts.
Right.
So you're retreating back. You're retreating back.
This would meet the 200-mile.
Yes. I thought so, yes. Okay, very good.
Well, you knew I was going to be the
I'm
first
holding on to the 200 miles, whether you guys like it or not.
The development team here, both these projects are being developed by the same team. It's a company called G2 Energy, and this company was founded in 2003. They are very experienced. This particular company has 4 existing landfill gas projects in the country. One of them is local. It's actually, this is something I forgot to mention, the Ostrom Road site has an existing project that's selling power to Silicon Valley Power. Silicon Valley Power is the municipal utility that serves the city of Santa Clara. So the Ostrom Road project is an expansion to that. The principals in this company have been in this industry for a long time, so apart from the 4 projects that in this current incarnation, they've developed over 50 projects in terms of combined experience. You can go ahead. So the power purchase agreement is just highlights of the key commercial terms. They're 20-year contracts, and I'll get to at the end of the slides here. I'm going to go through a couple of changes to the agreements relative to what was presented in the supplemental packet. One of those changes is in regards to the term of one of the projects, but I'm going to hold that for now. So they're essentially they're 20-year power purchase agreements at a known price with an option by MEA to extend an additional 5 years. That option would be exercised. It would be at the then current price if MEA were to exercise that option. So potentially up to a 25-year power purchase agreement. The products that would be purchased under this agreement would include the CEC qualified renewable energy. It would include capacity, which is a requirement that MEA has to serve its load, and also environmental attributes. The type of the product is unit contingent, meaning when the units produce, and these are base load facilities, so they're expected to essentially be running all the time except when they're down for maintenance. But when the amount of energy the units produce, that's what MEA will pay for. So it's a unit contingent, sort of a pay for production type of an agreement with a delivery point at the project location. Pricing is $100. It starts off $100 a megawatt hour, which is competitive. It's very, very similar to what MEA is paying today for renewables through the Shell agreement, and they would have a 1.5% escalation factor throughout the term. MEA will be the scheduling coordinator. Will through Shell, through CENA, will schedule deliveries. So interface with the ISO on behalf of these projects and be integrated into the MEA portfolio. And then the last point here to make is that as landfills, as they kind of go on through their lives and they take on more garbage, more refuse, they create more and more gas. So just like this Ostrom Road project is an expansion of existing, there's a potential down the line that additional projects could be added to these sites. So MEA, through this agreement, would have the right of first refusal on any expansion for these sites. And one of the reasons we really like these projects from a technical point of view is that they fit very well with the agency where it is today and also where it's going to be in the next few years. First off, they're, as I said, qualifying renewable energy in state, which is important because there are potential changes to the RPS regulations that are going to make essentially out-of-state resources very limited in terms of how they can be used for regulatory compliance. So we believe that the value of in-state resources are going to be going up. These are in-state, so it really kind of cuts off any of the regulatory risk associated with the changes in the regulations there. As I said, they're base load resources, so they will bring to the portfolio 20 years worth of reliable, essentially 24/7 power. They're a fairly significant step up in terms of renewable energy purchases relative to where we are today. Today, through the Shell agreement, we're purchasing about 40,000 megawatt hours a year of renewables. These are together 25,000, so it's about a 68% increase to what we have. So this will really help as we expand to phase 2 next year. This will, these resources will be kind of a help essentially offset the need to buy renewables through Shell or some other power supplier. So I mentioned the price is quite similar to the cost through the Shell agreement. So the plan really is to use these resources to expand to phase 2 or at least a next step to phase 2. If that doesn't happen for whatever reason, then these resources could substitute out, swap out what Shell's providing, and since they're similarly priced, that shouldn't have any type of a negative financial impact. And of course, where MEA is today, the fact that there's no credit support required on our end for these purchases, no financing required. It just seems appropriate for the current stage of the agency. In terms of environmental benefits, the US EPA has a landfill gas outreach program, and so these are some facts from the US EPA. And what they found is that these types of projects provide significant benefits to the environment, significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. For projects of the size that we're talking about here, they would be equivalent to any of the following that you see on this slide. That would be reducing, it'd be equivalent to taking 24,400 passenger vehicles off the road per year. The amount of carbon sequestered annually by 27,200 acres of pine forests. CO2 emissions from burning 670 rail cars worth of coal, or CO2 emissions from 14.3 million gallons of gasoline consumed. So some pretty significant GHG reduction benefits.
Huge.
So to kind of wrap things up here in terms of the projects, its size is quite appropriate for where we are. Could either fit within phase 1 or support expansion to phase 2. These are a proven technology. I don't think it's rocket science. These types of resources, sort of industrial equipment that generates the power. The development team is experienced, and we're confident that they know what they're doing and that these projects will come online at the time that they're projected to. Competitive price, particularly for in-state resources, and high viability on these projects. So staff and the technical team are really excited about these and very strongly recommend that the board approve these contracts. A couple of changes I did want to note from the agreement that was in the supplemental packet. And the first one I'll take on is there are two agreements, one for Ostrom Road and one for Hay Road. And the term of the Ostrom Road contract has been modified to be 18 years instead of 20 years. But MEA would have the right to extend that to 20 years at the contract price if the developer has the gas rights. And the reason for this, the issue here is that developer, this is the site with the existing project on it that's selling to Silicon Valley Power. Well, the developer has gas rights for, it was essentially a 20-year agreement back when that project was done, which was 2 years ago. So there's 18 years remaining on the term for their gas rights. So they're working to get that amended to extend it to 20, but since that's not done yet, we want to make sure that the term of our power purchase agreement coincides with the term of time where they have the gas rights. So we've changed that to be 18 years with the opportunity for MEA to extend that another 2 years at the contract price as long as the developer has the gas rights. So that's one change. The second change, and this is to both agreements, on the 5-year extension option. So after the 20 years, MEA can extend for another 5 years at then current market prices. There's been some clarifying language that states so long as, I don't know if we have to read the exact language or if I can just describe it, but so long as the developer has the gas rights for those additional 5 years and is intending to operate the project. So it's just a little bit of clarification there on the extension. And then the third change is in the confidentiality section. And maybe I'll ask Greg to just briefly comment on what the change was there.
Yes, we just have actually two clarifying changes on exhibits D and E in both contracts. And in section 2 of both of those exhibits, there was a section called confidential status, and that's been changed now to just read notice to seller. And the point here was that both the contract price and the contract term are public information. And so what we have agreed to do, though, is give them notice if someone asks for that information. But it is public. It's public right now in this document right here. So we would just say notice to seller as the title of section 2 in both exhibits. And also, there was just the last phrase to be deleted in the first paragraph of Section 2, also in both exhibits in both contracts, where it says, "and is not required to defend against it." That would be deleted. So that was just superfluous language here at the very end of paragraph or Section 2.
And then the seller knows all this? They've agreed to all these contract
Yeah,
changes?
this language has been agreed to. With that, open up for questions. Yes?
Yeah, John, just a basic mechanistic question. How do they collect this gas from a landfill? Whether you're going to flare it or run a generator? What?
Yeah. Well, you know, this is, it's a collection system. That's about the extent that I know of it. But, you know, they, Don, do you have any?
It's like a French drain with tentacles. So it's heavier than air and it sinks.
So there's a plastic covering or some type of covering that's non-porous that goes over a landfill, and then there's a series of tubes that have to be laid down under the landfill or as things are being laid on top, and those tubes are supposed to suck the gas out, you know, throughout the landfill. So it's not just collected at one point, but it's kind of collected through these tubes.
So they have to cover the entire landfill?
Yeah. Yeah, periodically. Yeah.
Each cell is covered.
Yeah, as they finish one area, they cover it and move on to the next.
That's what they've done out at Strauss, right?
They've done some of that as well.
That's different. That actually, it's like a tented methane.
Methane.
That's an in-vessel
Yeah.
system, yeah.
So this it almost looks like a landscape watering system. When they're laying one of these over a landfill, there's all this PVC piping around with holes in it, so it kind of collects the paper. There's a negative pressure created, so it slowly pulls methane into the piping system into a central flaring point.
Not germane to our discussion.
No, it's good to know how these things work. That's the fun of
And we're trying to, we've been offered by the development team to take a site tour, and board members are certainly welcome. I know Don's been trying to schedule that, but sounds like, Tom, you may have an interest in that.
You're definitely coming there.
Maybe you just want to hear the report back after.
You get to dig into the landfill, Tom.
These things are really worth seeing, actually.
Yeah. Wind turbines were much
Dave?
better.
Yeah, John, under what conditions do you anticipate the agency is going to pursue these bilateral kind of negotiations and deals versus
Good question.
going into the RFP?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really, if it's going to be a fairly rare opportunity, I would say. Maybe rare is not the right word, but I think it's really, if the right project comes along, then we're going to want to pursue it. And so that was the case here. Due to the size, the price, and the near-term online date, it really seemed like a type of opportunity we wanted to pursue and not delay it, you know, force it into some other process. So I think it's just another tool. It's not, I don't think, going to be the primary way that MEA is going to be procuring resources, but I think, you know, this agency is always open to opportunities as they come across. So I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer to your question, but it's just something that, you know, if it looks like a good deal, then, you know, we would want to pursue it.
And some of these opportunities are leading opportunities in the sense that these developers are out talking with other potential buyers. And you know, because we are competing for renewable supply, sometimes these opportunities will be elevated to immediate consideration based on the fact that they will be desirable by other entities as well. So as a player now in the renewable energy space, you know, we need to take advantage of these opportunities as they come along before they head out the door. And, of course, still being prudent in determining whether or not they fit.
But, you know, we've had a large number of developers approach the agency over the last 6-7 months. And, you know, this is the only one that's been brought before you for approval. And, you know, the reason for that are the reasons that I stated. It's very viable, clearly viable, and competitively priced. So, again, we think this is good opportunity for this agency, and that's something that we had to delay on.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, just quick ones. So do these guys actually have both the gas rights and their lot that they're going to have to lease to put the machine? Did they already have those? I mean, obviously, one's an operating facility, so they already have something, the gas rights you mentioned before, but is that one the Vacaville one versus the other one? Or?
The Vacaville one's the new
one.
project.
Do they actually have the rights locked up?
They do. Yeah,
okay,
we have
both these sites.
Part of our due diligence, we have.
No, I mean, I would imagine so, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to fill in the blanks here. So, and as far as and these are both active landfills, they're not capped, so that's why they have expansion possibilities.
Right.
Okay. And as far as the partnership, did they submit, or the LLC, did they submit financing plans to you and you evaluated them about how they're, I mean, it sounds like CAT is financing.
Yeah,
the equipment,
CAT's providing the financing for both of them. Yeah, so.
And as far as.
Their support letters of credit. It must be on.
No, good.
The support letter of credits for their guarantees are going to be coming from CAT. So that's, their guaranteed support is coming from that source as its guarantor.
Right, but there's equity in here somewhere?
In the LLC?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's equity in the LLC. Yeah, they're it's not 100% financed, right?
Okay. But it's, each one's a project financing thing, I would imagine, and,
right.
And the partners own the equity, or is it some other scenario? You've asked who the owners are, and you're comfortable with who the owners are?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't find out about it later, that's
No.
Shell or something?
And none of you are owners, right? Good.
Okay. All right, and then as far as the pricing goes, this is one of the most desirable of renewable because it's constant, and this is the best, in terms of where the market is for landfill gas. This is kind of where it is. So, and where it is versus our current price levels is where?
It's pretty much the same as what we're paying now through the Shell here for the renewable power.
So
we're paying about $100
that Shell's getting on, as a broker on top of that, we couldn't work it down because this is a desirable project. But even though they've been sitting there for 2 years without selling the rest of their gas, they already did one project on half their gas rights, the other half, has there been much room, was there a lot of negotiation on price, or just so the public knows that?
Yeah, these, the price, as I said, we feel is quite competitive. So there was negotiation on really all aspects of the PPA, price included. I think one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we're buying new resources, that we're not putting upward cost pressure on the agency unnecessarily. So by being able to purchase these resources at a cost that is essentially at or below what we're paying now, it means we could fit that into the current portfolio without any real cost increase. So yeah, we're confident, we're very comfortable that the price is competitive.
And the letter of credit hangs out for as far as their performance guarantee, there's some financial, is that right? Hangs out for the letter? I mean, I'm sure they couldn't get it, well, from CAT, you could probably get a 20-year financial, but bank, you're not getting it, so that's where they're.
It actually falls off over time, so after 10 years of operations, then it goes down to 25,000.
Okay. But there's a make good on the power side of it, because if you're planning I mean, this is all stuff you've probably thought about as far as the load, if your load's going like this, because their gas isn't their production dies for whatever reason. There's some mechanism in here that deals with that. You're going to have to go out and get merchant power to offset.
Right. Yeah. Right. So there's a damages provision, and it's really the primary period of concern is the development period, and, because once a project like this is up and running, it's pretty low risk in terms of it not producing. But typically the risk in doing renewable projects is getting it built, and so there is a. And if we're counting on we'll be counting on these resources to come online on the date that they're contractually supposed to come online. So, If that date slips, then there are damages that the developer would owe the agency to cover the potential for us having to go out and replace that power on the market.
John, on teeing off of Jonathan's question, what about this concern that one citizen raised about pulling too hard with negative pressure to pull gas out of the landfill and then, sucking that area dry before you can open up a new cell and pull gas from that part? Are we satisfied that these guys know well enough what they're doing to time it well, and they'll be delivering a nice smooth base load supply for us?
Yeah, we are.
And I guess there's failure to perform provisions or damages if they drop, and
Yeah, I think these, the authorities, the agencies that are tasked with licensing these facilities, have found them to be, first of all, qualifying renewable, meaning that they provide environmental benefits. We saw the information from the EPA that these types of projects reduce greenhouse gases. So I think some folks, there is an opinion out there that depending on how the landfill is operated, that the environmental benefits might not be there. But I think that's really kind of a speculative, type of a concern. And the authorities that we're relying on disagree with that point of view. So I think to the extent that there's a debate there, it really doesn't belong here so much as it belongs at the EPA and the CEC.
Good. No questions? Members of the public, comments on the proposed contracts? John, thanks. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, I appreciate you asking that question, Charles. I do believe there are some environmental objections to landfills, and I don't have information about them, but I think the Sierra Club does, and they might want you to wait a month to think about it and check those out, just so you know. But I also wanted to say that you were talking about where you were before last year, this time, and December 17th is when we met at Rebecca's. We had a whole potato strategy meeting to figure out how we were going to organize right through the holidays so we could hit those 12 meetings between January 6th and 12th, and then on to February 4th. So, yeah, it's amazing where we've been in the last year. And I'm really proud of you guys for coming up with this plan.
Thank you, Barbara.
By the way, I think we all look 10 years younger, don't you? I was just thinking that, 10 years at least.
Black hair and a full head. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. My name is Catherine Rajai. I'm with a company called Evolution Markets. I'm a PPA broker and consultant. I have been in the California renewables market for years, participating in RFPs, doing bilateral deals. What you see before you today with these PPAs, you see some of the most experienced developers in the field, as these guys mentioned, and I have to commend your team for the negotiation that they put forth, the effort, the time, the due diligence they've performed on these projects. These guys will deliver the renewable megawatt hours you need to support your load at one of the most competitive prices you're going to see out there, and you're going to see it in your RFP. When the results of your RFP come in, I'm sure you'll be oversubscribed. 90% of it is going to be probably not viable, because that's what all utilities get. You have a tremendous project, and you did a great job in negotiating. So congratulations, and I commend your work.
Thank you very much. Great. Seeing no one else rise, I'll bring it back.
Yeah, just the one, this stuff's been around forever, man. I mean, they started doing, the company I used to work for got bought by Waste Management, so that Waste Management used to roll these things out largely so they didn't have to flare it. It was almost cheaper to build these than to flare them. And so regardless of whether you just got a merchant power deal with it. So the only thing you can, this is data knowledge, the sucking thing, is if you take it out of one area too quickly. And the whole thing is to pull it out of different sources at once so that you're not pulling it out of one area. So, I mean, that was 15, 20 years ago when I dealt with this stuff. So, it's better than just letting it go or flaring it. I mean, there's no argument to that. I don't think anybody's producing an argument it's better to just flare this stuff. So.
Thank you. I will say, Barbara, and I got some inquiries from the Sierra Club, and so I did have a chance to check with staff. The first objection was it enables inappropriately the bad habit of burying green waste or food waste in a landfill. And in a sense, by using the methane for an engine, you're enabling a bad habit. And that kind of gets back to John's response, which is the CEC has determined that better than flaring or better than just emitting, at least we're dealing with what's already there. So I felt satisfied in that dialogue that we weren't an enabler, we're actually getting rid of an environmental impact. And then the second one was the sucking too hard phenomenon. And again, the modern players who are using the modern engines are much more sophisticated than in the old days.
No, maybe you're dealing with stuff that's already in the ground. So it's not, you're not enabling people to put stuff that's already in the ground. It's already there. So they're not running pipes in the landfill. They're going to, the regulatory side is going to deal with that issue, and that's up to us and our respective entities to deal with on the food waste and green waste and ground cover and all that stuff. So.
Good. Yeah, for a plug to divert food and green to the green can into composting or a methane digester someday. Keep up the good work. I know a lot of southern Marin and central Marin jurisdictions are diverting like crazy now, which is great. Director?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think these two projects are really, really exciting because it does provide energy for us at a very competitive rate for renewable. And it does have a tremendous impact on the environment. I mean, those numbers were staggering that you shared as far as this. And, I think these are the kind of things that, as they exist out there, it's great for us to go after them because they give us a long-term source of renewable energy. And again, it's taking stuff that would just be greenhouse gases and creating damage and allowing us to make use of that. And I want to thank Evolution Consultants, or whatever it was, for being here and talking about this. I really appreciate that, your experience in the field and sharing your experience. And I'm just so excited about these two projects. They're really awesome.
Great. Thanks for your work on the contract.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were on the contracts committee, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Anything else from staff?
I would just like to echo the thanks to the Ad Hoc Contracts Committee. We actually had a couple of meetings on this and spent a lot of time going through it, and they gave a lot of time and good ideas. There were a couple of suggestions made on our meeting this week. I forget if it was Monday or Tuesday, but we were able to follow up with some of that due diligence that was requested and added the additional noticing address. So I just wanted you all to be aware that those things were put in place, and we appreciate your input so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Don. Great. Is there a motion to approve?
I think motion to approve as revised.
Approve as revised.
So moved. Oh. Second.
I think we have thirds on that one. Anything further? Any objection? That passes unanimously. Congratulations again.
Yes, thank you,
Good work.
staff.
Good
That's
job,
wonderful.
yes.
And Evolution.
Next item up is the regulatory update.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank the goodness.
Yeah, we're going to do this megawatt by megawatt.
As usual, there's been a lot of action on the regulatory front, and so I've provided the regulatory summary that I provide each month, and so I'll just sort of walk through that briefly so you all get a sense of what's been going on. At the top of the list is the PG&E general rate case. Kirby provided excellent testimony. We didn't print it out in the packet because it was, we didn't want to kill that many trees, actually. So, but I think that the result of the hearings was good, and we're currently developing opening briefs There have been continued settlement negotiations in the general rate case, but they haven't touched on our main issue, which is the conservation incentive adjustment. So the settlements haven't been as relevant to us. The second one that I'll touch on here relates to the energy resource recovery account docket, and this is where PCIA lands and is calculated according to the methodology. And you'll remember that we had requested that the methodology for how it is calculated be included in the scope of this docket, and that that request was denied, but it was brought up in another docket in the direct access order instituting rulemaking. And so this docket has actually been sort of running concurrently with that one. There was a proposed decision issued in the ERA docket, and on the day that the comments were due to the proposed decision, a schedule was sent out with in the DAOIR that provides a schedule for going forward of how the exit fee issues are going to be resolved. And so on the same day that that scoping memo was released, the comments were due, and so comments were provided by ARM, Alliance for Energy Retail Markets, and since it was such a quick turnaround, we weren't part of those comments, but we did develop a reply, and a couple of parties joined us, City and County of San Francisco, and also the Energy Users Forum, in support of those comments, which is basically the comments want to delay the implementation of next year's PCIA until the methodology is evaluated in the DAOIR. So there's a projected final commission decision that will be issued on December 16th. So that is that docket, and just sort of hopping ahead to the direct DAOIR. There was a pre-hearing conference that took place, and Dan attended that one. And this week there was the first step in the process was to file statements on workshop topics. So there's going to be a set of 3 workshops on exit fee issues. And so we jointly filed workshop topics, and it was a pretty large consortium, again, similar but not the exact same consortium as the folks that pulled together the initial exit fee request. And that sort of set forth our key PCIA-related issues, proposed workshop topics, and also proposed agenda. So the first workshop session is going to happen on December 7th, and there's going to be pretty quick movement after that, so we hope that a lot of issues are going to be resolved there. The next item I'll touch on relates to energy efficiency and how CCAs are able to access that. We had met with the commission last month and spoke with some of the aides to the commissioners, but we had anticipated that a proposed decision was going to be issued, but the commission decided against it, and since there's going to be so much turnover at the end of the year, we don't anticipate any new proposed decision or really any movement on this until next year when the new commissioners are put in place. So we'll be sort of waiting and watching on that, and hopefully we'll be able to take some action and move forward. The next item on the list is on the CCA docket, and this relates to the CCA bond and how that's calculated. There's been some ongoing discussions with the settling parties. MEA is not a settling party, was not part of the settlement that was proposed to the commission. And MEA is currently developing comments. Opening comments on the proposed decision are due on December 9th.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So was it a good thing that we were not part of the settlement party? It was, because that predates us in some ways.
We didn't exist.
Exactly. Okay, so it was a timing issue.
Yeah.
Timing and resources. It would have taken a lot of resources, and at the time we didn't have an agency or a budget for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think there's just adding on to that, I think there's been we've learned a lot since starting launch to really fully understand what the impacts of the settlement would be and how things would pan out. So, let's see here, I touched on the direct access docket. Next, various parties came out with a settlement that would require a wide range of entities, including IOUs, including CCAs and other energy service providers, to purchase combined heat and power, so cogeneration, CHP, as part of our portfolio. And it's a large overarching settlement that would resolve a lot of sort of decade-long issues between IOUs and CHP folks. The settlement, however, sort of brought in CCA and other ESP folks without having them being part of the negotiation process, and so it's really imposing obligations on folks that weren't part of it. So this past month, there was a proposed decision issued by the administrative law judge, which would accept in its entirety the settlement. And so we have been following up on that. There was a meeting that took place that Dawn participated in that was with CARB, and there were continuing conversations with the settling parties. The comments are due on the proposed decision on December 6th, and so we'll be filing, and we'll see how we'll keep everybody posted.
Anything in that hurts us?
So
in any of that?
Yeah, so the obligation in this settlement would require that either we would have to procure this specific type of resource, so cogeneration would have to be required to procure that, or the IOUs could procure, the IOU being PG&E would procure it on our behalf, and we would have to pay for it. And so, I think that part of the issue is, we are extremely aggressive in our qualifying renewable procurement and also our GHG reductions. And so, it takes away some of our policymaking ability in how we're procuring and how we can aggressively, maximize the amount of renewable energy, minimize the amount of, greenhouse gas impacts. And I think that just from a due process aspect, it's disheartening to have these obligations imposed on us without any ability to participate in the process. And so so those would be sort of the negative points on it.
Yeah, and if I could add one more point, I think that one of the things that's most concerning about this proposed decision is that it really fundamentally changes the way that that CCAs are thought to exist, based on the legislation, that we should be able to choose which technologies we use and which suppliers we use to procure power from. And so it's really a slippery slope. If the CPUC begins to tell us that we need to use a little bit of CHP or a little bit of this or that to fill our own load, then it starts to become less and less important for us to exist. I mean, the reason that we formed this agency was to choose different sources of power that could reduce greenhouse gas emissions and shift more to a reliable mix, and we're doing all of that. But if we are told which technologies we have to choose, and those types of constraints are put on us in the same way they're put on IOUs, the flexibility that we have that has enabled us to succeed can start to be slowly diminished. So I don't think that this decision itself is something that would cause the agency to sink, but it sets a precedent that's very concerning. And So we've spoken to Senator Arpaio's office about this. I think it's important that you all are aware that this is kind of a dangerous direction for the PUC to be going in, and so it's a good thing to have on your radar when you're talking to folks in the regulatory realm.
Thank you. Don, also related to Director Tremaine's question, on the general, I think it's the general rate case with the conservation incentive adjustment, we're expecting some kind of decision toward year end that gives us some level of understanding what the pressure is, if any, on our existing rate structure.
Well, there's two components to the general rate case, and so the one that we've been participating in with regards to the conservation incentive adjustment is phase 2.
Okay.
And phase 1 is on a separate track, and that sets sort of the requirements of PG&E, and that will be, you know, as I understand it, that is what will determine sort of the overall up or down amount of money that would be required, and phase 2 is sort of how that's allocated, you know, what customers are paying, what amounts.
Okay, so we've been pretty active on phase 1, and we're expecting a decision right at the end of December, right, on phase 1?
Do you know what the timing is?
No, I think that's more of a, I think it's phase 2 that we're dealing with right now. Those are rate design issues, and this conservation incentive adjustment is related to rate design. So that's the phase of the general rate case that we're in right now, and I believe it's late spring timeframe, April, May, where we expect to get more information on this.
But there's something happening right at year end that affects our.
That's phase 1?
Right, and we're not like engaged on that's kind of a phase, that's basically just the response to PG&E's overall rate request.
I think you might be thinking about is at the end of this year, we'll see what PG&E's rates are going to be for 2011, and that's real important, relevant as we look at expansion to phase 2. So it's the rate as well as the PCIA, the exit fee. Those will both be known, you know, very, very late December. So I think that might be what you're thinking about. Because we've been really paying attention to that as we start thinking about, okay, how do we maybe need to adjust our rates?
Right.
You know, what does this mean for our expansion plans?
Okay. Got it, good. So, and we're still on track to get that information by year end.
Yeah, and that, just to be clear, that's an annual rate setting process that PG&E does. It's not a CPUC proceeding.
I see.
It's not a part.
Okay. I just want to mention to my board colleagues, that first meeting in January comes up really quick after the holiday, the 6th. And that's actually an important meeting for us, because we may need to be in there discussing things like our executive officer and rate setting issues and stuff. So, yeah, I know for me anyway, I can drift into January 3rd and 4th and realize, oh yeah, got to pull my head back out, and the 6th will come up awfully quick, that first Thursday. Probably TMI, but anyway, that's. So any other questions? Oh wait, I have one other question. How many commissioners do you guys expect to turn over at the, are we expecting all 5?
No.
There's only a couple term outs,
There'll be 2 that are terming out, and Commissioner Ryan hasn't yet been confirmed. I don't know what the probability is of her just being confirmed or a new commissioner being appointed.
So it's 2 plus Ryan, isn't it?
But it's also assumed that if another commissioner is named president, that he wouldn't stick around. So I think it's really important to push for a new face on the PUC and insist on different presidents so that a 4th possible slot would be opened up.
Wow, that could really change things. Interesting. So the governor has discretion on identifying a new president even though his term isn't finished?
Yeah.
Nice, okay.
He'll do it though.
Yeah, I don't know.
He displaced Loretta Lynch.
Yeah, if there aren't any other board questions right now, please, Megan.
Just on that same topic of the CPUC appointments, I was
wondering if, I've been informally trying to gather as many names of potential candidates that other organizations will be recommending to the transition team and to the governor-elect. And it would be nice if something like the briefing booklet and perhaps sort of a high points version of the CCA hearing were available to, I could get them to the candidates through the recommending organizations. So
Wow, that's great.
I think the more we can make sure that I mean, we can't control who all these groups are recommending. I'm trying to get John Giesman on as many of their lists as possible, but in reverse, if we could get them CCA, those candidates CCA immersed by their allies, it would be nice. So I don't know if those resources would be available.
Yeah. Is that cool, Jamie? We could get Megan
Yeah.
several more packets.
We can definitely, there are pretty long lists.
Well, certainly electronically.
Yeah.
I think it more the merrier. More people know what we're up to and how. It's good.
Make some friends.
Right on. Other members of the public on the regulatory update? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Beth. So with that, we'll move to board announcements.
I just wanted to update everybody on the latest meeting that we had in Fairfax with PG&E. For those of you who don't know, we passed a moratorium on the smart meters, which caused PG&E to agree to have a series of community meetings in Fairfax. We had our third this past Tuesday, and they answered a lot of questions. We're handed a bunch more. There's a possibility that a fourth meeting will take place. Interestingly enough, the guy who was Bill Devereaux's boss is now the head of the smart meter, or is now the face of the smart meter program, whereas Devereaux was before. He was the guy that got embarrassed by infiltrating the other side's website.
Peeping.
Yes, Ralph. Yes. So, so it was interesting. One of the things that I said to them was that I hoped that the conversation that had started here at the MEA was going to get revved back up and continue. And they were a little ambivalent about that, although they did say that they were going to stay in touch with Dawn. I know you're excited about that. The other interesting thing that came out of that was the revelation, which had been actually reported in the Chronicle a few days earlier, that they are actually investigating providing an alternative to the smart meter. And they wouldn't give any detail on that, although I was told afterwards that it's very likely that that's the direction they're going to head. So that was very encouraging news, because that is, of course, what we were pushing at the subcommittee level here, you know, subcommittee of the technical committee that met with PG&E, met with Devereaux, met with Josh Townsend before. And the other sort of aside was, it was a bit disturbing. They had with them somebody from the CPUC, and I was really surprised at how aggressive and negative she was toward the Fairfax position. And it was really disheartening to have that coming from somebody who was there representing the CPUC, supposedly to hear the concerns. And at one point, I noted to the public that I was keeping the time that they were speaking as opposed to the time that PG&E was answering, so that everybody got their full 3 minutes on the stopwatch on my iPod. And she made the assertion that my iPod put out more EMF than the smart meter did. And if I didn't love my iPod so much, I'd have thrown it at her. Because it was just so absurd. But she was really, I mean, I was stunned at how, at what a sour attitude she brought to the meeting. And it was really, it made me wonder, you know, what are we dealing with as an animal at CPUC. But We
You
may
know,
have
Lou,
another
that-
meeting with them.
That very point was repeated on behalf of the PUC tonight on NPR. When they announced the PUC decision today to not suspend the smart meter rollout, they actually commented that the PUC's position is they put out less EMF than a typical cell phone. So
Right.
that's actually policy of the whole.
Well, it is, and they didn't just drink that Kool-Aid, they guzzled it by the gallon, because they really just don't want to believe that there might be some sort of a, some answer other than what the FCC tells you, that if it's not burning you, it's not hurting you. So.
Well, I've heard two stories about Deborah. One that he resigned,
Yes, he
and one
did.
that he is on paid leave.
He was initially on paid suspension.
And then resigned.
And then the very next day, he resigned.
Thank you. Other directors? Okay, a couple quickies. On behalf of the little ad hoc committee on pension benefits, we are still in process of working out whether to, recommend to the board that we go defined contribution versus defined benefit. And the reason I pulled the item for some of the technical cleanup is that we want to make sure that that is taken holistically. And so there was a concern this evening that we better take another look at the cleanup language to make sure that we're not making any mistakes in terms of the overall approach. So we'll need to bring that back in January, and my apologies, Don, that happened last minute. So anyway, that committee will keep meeting, although I don't know if we'll make it before the holidays, but anyway, we'll try to get it done as soon as we can. I guess perhaps as late as the February meeting, but if we're ready, we'll bring back a recommendation as soon as we can for the board. And it'll probably see some daylight at the executive committee first before it comes up to the board. So the next opportunity there probably will be the mid-January, unless by some miracle we move faster, but I doubt it. I don't even know if we have an XCOM in December.
We do currently, unless
Okay.
someone would like to cancel it.
Okay. Actually, I'm
See
hoping we
anybody.
hold it. Dawn, is there any chance the refinancing might warrant turning that into a special meeting of the board? Is there any reason? Yeah, so we're going to hold that XCOM, and you may get an urgent call to try to rally for a quorum in case we can make our bank refinance decision at that meeting.
A quorum at our holiday party?
December 16th. No, I'm sorry,
Is it
December
the
14th.
Oh, the 14th?
December 14th?
Yeah, they usually
Okay.
sit on that mid,
It's a Wednesday, so it would be the
the
15th.
15th.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, yeah, in the morning.
Sunday.
That's going to be a brutal day. Yeah, so if we could, we might send out an all-call if you guys can possibly rally, if we get lucky. Chances are it'll happen at the January 6th meeting. Next announcement, I'm going to San Jose tomorrow to meet with a whole bunch of staff people from San Jose. Their representative to Green Cities, California, heard the general overview of MEA a month ago, and she's arranged for a bunch of staff people and the mayor and the mayor's senior aide or whatever to meet with me tomorrow for a couple hours. So they're showing some pretty keen interest in CCA, and they actually have on their list of questions how they might be able to work with us. So like Arcata and others, we might have some interest. And then I ran into Tom Butt at the Bag Ban event up in Sacramento, and he really wants Don and me to come over for a workshop with their city council to talk seriously about whether Richmond might be able to work with us in some fashion too. So after a couple years of dormancy, our JEPA structure may suddenly get some exercise.
Not inside the county.
Review. Yeah, I told Tom, my only criteria is I don't travel outside of Marin for a board meeting, so, but they might want to work with us in various fashions. And I guess Arcata is still idling out there looking for a date sometime?
Yeah, we have a date in early January where we'll be going out to speak to their council at an evening meeting. Their staff has been in discussions with us off and on over the last month.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, that was one of the items on our list from the August strategic planning meeting, and it turns out that since we're alive and well and flourishing now, that strategy is actually happening even faster than any of us thought it would. Next one, at the executive committee meeting I mentioned, we kind of talked about a strategy vis-a-vis Jerry Brown's transition team, and there was a theory that Doug Bosco was involved and stuff, and we've learned more so that it makes more sense for me to get out of the way with my bad schedule these days. And so I think the main point of contact, Dawn and Jamie, should be Sean relative to outreach to the transition. So Sean and Megan, I think, and then I can be available to help as needed, but I've been sitting in the way of the critical path to get information and contacts with these people, and part of it turns out Doug's not that involved, and so Sean and Megan will work the channel.
We want to put a delegation together to go up and deliver your briefing book and do it in person and have a meeting with them and really explain what we're up to and why it makes sense for the rest of the state.
Great. So and Senator Leno's office might be helpful to us in that effort and so on. But anyway, I wanted you to know that Sean's your key lead contact for that, because I'm a pain in the neck. And,
I didn't say that.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Oh, Sean, please.
I just have a request for the staff at a future board meeting. The term interconnection has come up. It's going to be coming up more and more now with feed-in tariff and the new RFPs and all that. And I think it would be an opportunity to educate the board on what it is. I know that MEA is not in a position and we won't be paying for those interconnection fees, but it's a bigger issue, I think, around transmission and how the whole thing works and how it relates to smart grid, and Barbara's comment earlier about mapping sources, and it's the big puzzle, and interconnection being sort of the next dot in that puzzle. So I would just request some education from you guys around that issue, and sort of along those lines then anticipating, interconnection is just the next thing that comes to my mind, but what are the next 3 or 4 steps out that we need to start thinking about as we expand our renewables and get ready maybe to even do our own?
Great.
That'd be great.
I had one thing, if the board's
Any more on
done.
the board? Kirby?
Just mentioned this at the last executive committee meeting as well as the TechCom as well, and I just wanted to congratulate Charles and Don that both of whom are the recipients of a really neat award. Both have been awarded the honor of 2010 People of the Year for the Power Agency of Northern California. In addition to being very well deserved, I just think it speaks to the significance of what you're doing and the hard work that you both put in. And you're in very good company. Prior recipients of that award they're easily recognizable names, and I think you should really be proud of yourselves and at the agency that you built here. So, yeah.
And when is that celebration? In January, right?
Yeah, it's in early January. I think it's January 11th or 12th.
That's all I have.
Congratulations.
We're going to definitely want to fill a table, right? Didn't they say that we should invite some friends? So we'll be back to you. We got to get the scoop. We'll make sure you hear.
Yeah.
We want our pals there.
Yes. The designated drivers, that's what they want.
Yeah.
The raucous crowd.
Yeah, is that right?
Northern California.
They pour good Chardonnay. I'll need a driver.
Well deserved. Congratulations.
Yes.
Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you. We're adjourned.
All right.
Congratulations. Good meeting.
Charles, you're putting